Hola, buenas tardes. Yo soy Isabel Ramirez, a senior from Dreyfus School of the Arts who will be attending Columbia University in the fall. Es un placer recibirlos for the 9th Annual Hispanic Latino Studies Virtual Summer Institute. Ahora, I will recite the Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish. Yo prometo lealtad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. I am delighted to now welcome our Administrative Program Planner for Hispanic Latino Studies, Mrs. Patricia Trejo.
Gracias, Isabella. What a wonderful warm welcome, and congratulations to you. You're a senior. All right. Way to go. Saludos. Bienvenidos a todos. Thank you for joining us. I see that we have several of amazing participants this afternoon, this morning, depending on where you are at. We have participants from all over the nation as well as internationally. How about that? So how incredible is that? Well, welcome, and we are delighted to have you come and join us as we work to transform our education to ensure that it is reflective of the students that we serve. We all know how important it is to expose our children with rich, diverse experience. When we have windows and mirrors in our classrooms, we are positively exposing our students to others and to themselves. Providing a window to a child gives them the chance to understand races, ethnicities, cultures, customs, and traditions. Providing mirrors helps our students to build a healthy awareness of themselves. They are reflected within their learning environments, which helps to affirm their identity, experiences, and ultimately sending a message that they matter. So let's begin today together to transform and strengthen our curriculum and instruction to ensure that we learn the history, culture, and language of our Hispanic Latino students. To help us with that, we have Denise Soler Cox, who is an award-winning Latina filmmaker and cultural storyteller. She has dedicated to helping people transform, experience culture, identity, and what it means to belong. She's built a reputation for being a speaker who has the rare ability to shine a light on a sensitive and often ignored topic with extraordinary clarity, honesty, and humor. In 2018, she co-wrote and published her first culturally responsive curriculum called Own Your Enye for Education. Her work with Project Enye has been featured on Forbes, CNN, NBC, Latino, Chicano, the Chicago Tribune, Telemundo, Univision, Fox News Latino, and many more. But first, let's take a look at her incredible film, The Enye Effect.
It took me a long time to figure out who I am. I am an Enye. Enye! No, it's not a cult or part of some new age movement. It's a group of people here in the United States that is 16 million strong and growing. A group of people that found themselves stuck between two worlds because they were born in the United States to parents who were born in Spanish-speaking countries. Sometimes we don't feel Latino enough, and sometimes we don't feel American enough, but we are both. We are Enyes, sandwiched between two cultures, navigating an uncharted road. It was a relief to find out that I was a part of this group, and all I wanted to do was let other Enyes know how this felt so they could feel this connection. I feel like this is what I was born to do. This is our story. My name is Denise. Wow, I'm out of practice.
Exactly, I know.
Hi, my name is Denise Soler Cox, and wait, what do I say?
I'm an entrepreneur with a big idea.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay, cue the music. Bum, bum, bum.
Hi, my name is Denise Soler Cox, and I'm an entrepreneur with a big idea.
And I'm Henry Ansbacher, a veteran documentary filmmaker.
Welcome to the Project Enye podcast, where we share what it's like behind the scenes creating a movement. Let's start the interview off with saying your full name.
My name is Guadalupe Olvera Hurt.
I am Zaida Rivera.
Christopher Reeve Linares.
I'm Charles Carpenter.
Hey, my name is Luis Guzman, member of the universe.
My name is Richard Montoya.
Edwin Torres.
Hi, I'm Yancy Arias.
I think I was the first Puerto Rican named Edwin in New York.
My name is Bianca Dominguez.
Victor Manuel Cruz Medina.
My mother is Puerto Rican and my father's Colombian.
My mother is from Lima, Peru.
I'm an Enye because my mother is from El Salvador.
I'm Shakira Barrera, and I'm a Nicaraguan Enye.
My name is George Torres.
My name is Eddie Montalvo.
And I'm an Enye.
My parents were born in Puerto Rico.
I'm American, but I'm Mexican.
My parents came from Mexico.
I'm Belen, there you go.
My name is Flaco Navaja. I'm a Puerto Rican Enye.
For years, I've been interviewing different Enyes and documenting their stories. I've laughed and cried with them, and I found there is a distinct shared experience among us. I have knocked my head against the wall for a long time, trying to figure out how to explain the Enye experience. And I think sharing my own story is probably the best place to start. I was born in Manhattan in Beth Israel Hospital and brought back to our apartment in Rosedale Gardens in the Bronx, where I shared a room with both my older brothers, David and Danny, otherwise known as Gogi. And incidentally, my first word was Gogi. My father was also born in New York City. His parents were from Cuba and Puerto Rico, which made him an Enye too. My mom came to New York from Puerto Rico when she was 13, and she was raised in Spanish Harlem. It's very insular there, and even though it's in the United States, it sounded and smelled and tasted just like Puerto Rico. All the neighbors in the Bronx that I can remember spoke Spanish. That was the predominant language. My experience in the Bronx felt very, very Puerto Rican.
That's where Yumi and David slept.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, that was our bedroom.
We moved there in '62, and we left when you were 4. Right. In 1974, because you were born in '70. We lived there for 13 years.
When I was 4, my parents made the massive financial decision to move out of the apartment and into a much larger house on an acre of land in Westchester County. Even though our new house was only 45 minutes north of the city, we left behind the sounds and the smells and the familiar surroundings of our old neighborhood. We moved to a strange new world, hoping for something better.
My mother's name was Loling. That was her nickname, and all her friends called her Loling. All her family called her Loling. But when we got to Westchester, she became Dolores. And my last name went from the Soler family to the Solar family. The longer I lived in Westchester, the less connected I felt to this other persona that I was. But my mom and my dad never lost that connection. And there were 2 kids that were my childhood friends, that were my brothers from another mother. And so I really grew up with 4 brothers, my 2 blood brothers, and then these 2 other guys, Omar and Augie.
All right, now, this is what I remember.
I know exactly what you're going to do.
I remember it going something like this. Right. Denise, the police, had a feast with popcorn and tacos and things you can't eat. Because she can't cook.
Even cook.
She can't even read a book. So, and you cried.
Popcorn and candy.
Right, popcorn and candy. And I remember you crying, Mom, they said I can't cook, Mom. And you ran away crying, and we were laughing our butts off. I remember that.
Augie was my brother David's best friend. And so it's hard not to be with Augie and not think of my brother.
David and I were always really close. We shared socks, friends, and a sense of humor. We would spend hours playing albums and singing together. Without him, I didn't know who I was. My mom told me yesterday one of the deciding factors to leaving the Bronx was the second time that my brother's bike was stolen from him. While he was riding it, he got pushed off the bike, and they actually stole it from him for the second time. And it was after that they decided, forget it, we're moving. And there would be my house. I remember in high school, I used to just jump out the window.
Why were you jumping out the window?
To sneak out What was different inside was that it smelled like a Puerto Rican house. It smelled like sofrito. It smelled like plátanos frying on the pan. There was a lot of salsa and merengue and just old school Puerto Rican music playing all the time. That was also when I started hearing that I was letting go of my roots and dressing to Americana, looking to Americana, talking like those rich people. I just didn't have like an awareness of that there was something that I was doing that was defying some rule. I was just being a kid.
There's nothing here that reminds me of the Bronx or New York City. It looks different, it sounds different, and the sound of the swaying trees is so familiar when they like hit each other, when the leaves like hit each other.
Although I often felt isolated in Westchester, I found a second home with our neighbors just 2 doors down the street. In their home, I felt completely accepted and safe.
Hi! So good to see you. Looking good. Thank you. I don't know why.
Tony and Erica are like my second parents.
A lot of people were kind of upset, for instance, that we had adopted a black child. And we were told that we're gonna ruin our neighborhood and we're gonna decrease the value of our home.
Yeah, that's
my gosh.
mostly that. It was a petition.
What?
Asking us to sign the petition. A black family was planning on moving into our neighborhood. And we said, we'll sign a petition for some more black people to move in. But not the opposite. You must have just moved in. And one day we were driving home and there were those 3 guys of color. They weren't really black, but they were colorful enough. Walking down the street and we said, wow, there's some color in our neighborhood now.
Going up there every summer, every weekend, I noticed that I stuck out like a sore thumb. There was like a mystique about me, and people were kind of even afraid of me before they even got to know me because they didn't know who I was. And I was only there for a short while. You guys actually live there.
I did not know what racism was until I went there. I did not know so many white people existed until I went there. I got into a lot of fights to protect them.
Right.
My whole thing was, let me find the biggest kid and kick his ass. And I did that because I was scared. And it still affects me to this day.
You were so young, Denise, that I know you didn't have to, thankfully, endure that type of stuff. But what did you feel? What kind of racism did you go through, if any? Do you remember?
Yeah, and Gogi doesn't really know anything about it. But yeah, I had to deal with it a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
In school?
Yeah. First day, 7th grade, and we're sitting in the back of homeroom. We're like, oh my God, we're in homeroom. This is so exciting. And we have all of our books and everything. And then this girl walks in the room, and she's got like tons of makeup on, and her hair's like hairsprayed out, and her clothes are tight. And then like behind her was like this posse of girls, and they all looked the same. And I'm like, holy shit, these girls look scary. And they all stopped right in front of me, and the girl goes, good morning, Spick. And that was the beginning of a very difficult 4-year span that actually happened every single day for 4 years.
I thought you had a free pass because, first of all, you're a light-skinned Latina, you're pretty, you know, you got guys around you that want to protect you all the time. So honestly, I thought you just got a free pass.
No, it's funny. Wow, no way. I was going through hell, and I just didn't say anything.
I just wish you would have said something.
Yeah, I know.
What was I gonna say?
I don't know. For the past 52 years, I didn't know that. I didn't.
Right.
I thought like you did, that you could skate it. I thought you got by because you're light-skinned.
Right.
That's what I thought about it.
Yeah.
Elementary school was definitely very idyllic. Things started to change like in middle school. This group of girls just decided we're gonna prank call Denise. My phone rang and I would pick it up and they're like, Spick, and I just would hang it up. And so I just kept hanging up and hanging up. And then my dad woke up and he's like, what's going on, Denise? Like, who's calling? And I said, these people are calling and they never leave me alone at school. And I just remember how mad he got and how much I had regretted not sharing it with him before. And he's like, do not pick up the phone the next time it rings. And it was like, we were high-fiving, and I'm like, yeah, you know, and like my father has my back, like he knows what's going on, and now it's all gonna go away, like I'm not gonna have to deal with this anymore, you know? And then a few weeks later, he died. He got sick. That was very quick. He was diagnosed and he died within 90 days. And the whole school knew, but they still kept bullying. And then I definitely couldn't say anything to my mom about it. My mom had so many jobs, you know, she was trying to like go to school and to provide, and I just didn't want to be the one that said, it's not working out, even if my experience wasn't that happy.
Ella es Boricua, she is Puerto Rican, New Yorican, pastel lover, salsera, train riding anime nerd. She is Brooklyn's baby, heart anchored to a commonwealth deep in debt yet rich in cultura. She's arroz con gandules with a hint of recao. Her skin a mixture of tembleque y flan with a sprinkle of cinnamon across her face. Her voice sweet like tamarind and melodic like a serenade of coquilles. She roams freely.
I was raised on a steady diet of Rafi Levy, La Selecta, KRS-One, The Doors, Bob Marley, Jimi Hendrix, y La Protesta. I am the tree that grew from the seed planted by Ruben and Willie so many years ago. Siembra.
I was born in New York City, in the Bronx.
I was at Patrick Henry Junior High School. It was known as the Zip Gun School. We had the Comanches there. We had it was all gangs at that time. This is in the 40s.
My grandparents were one of the first Puerto Rican families in Waterford, Connecticut, which is the suburb right next to New London, to own a home.
I wanted to go to Benjamin Franklin on 116, which was run by the Italians, and they didn't want the Puerto Ricans.
My mom was born in the Dominican Republic, and my dad was born in Nicaragua. And they met in Queens. And I'm the only Dominican in show business. Thank you.
Really?
Keep the applause down, thank you. It could have been a can of Bustelo, it could have been a can of beans, it could have been a sneaker. It didn't matter. Of course, the chancleta was the ultimate weapon. And if she could have attached the battery to that thing, she would have. So my mom was gangster.
I've kind of grown used to being called about every rendition possible of the name Lupe.
I've gotten Persian, I've gotten Portuguese, I've gotten Hamas, which I'm always like, I don't think that that's a race, I think that's a political sect. I'm like,
Right now, I gotta represent all by myself. When there's a parade, it's only me.
And then I became a black militant, you know? So I went from one extreme to the other, and I had to eventually learn the middle ground.
I don't think I had realized I had Enya moments until I met Denise. In retrospect, I think I've had millions of Enya moments, and I didn't even know it. My dad is from Huachinango, which is a small town outside of Jalisco, and my mom is from León, Guanajuato. They both met in California, and we were born into basically a Spanish-speaking household. I didn't speak English until I went to kindergarten, so I was enrolled in an ESL class and considered a foreigner. And I am in an interracial marriage. My husband is German and a concoction of other things. We moved to Broomfield, which was predominantly white. I think I definitely felt like, wow, this is a little different.
During my junior and senior years in high school, it was just my mom and I living in the house. My brothers would swing by for home-cooked meals and special occasions. My life looked and felt pretty well adjusted. But that changed with a knock on the door late one Saturday night after Thanksgiving. I opened the door, and there was a cop and a priest standing in front of me. Behind me, my mother started screaming instinctively. They told us that my brother David was killed in a car accident.
Here's my brother, and here's my dad. And for whatever reason, I was in charge of writing these little sentences. Maybe my mom wanted me to like have a part of things. But the thing that sucked about when David died is like, I knew the drill. There was a time where I came here and I used to sit down here and like just try to connect with them. And there was a time when I like would talk to them, but I never really felt close, you know? Because all I felt connected to was their funerals. I didn't feel connected to them here, you know? But I still came anyway. It's a lucky girl that gets to have her father's love for a long time. I didn't get that. Now that it's been brought up a lot, I realize how much I need them. And I guess like a coping mechanism is just to ask them to be with me. Like I have like a really, really deep longing for the love of my dad and my brother. You know, it's like an ache that won't ever go away. And so much of my adult life is like marked by these guys dying. My mom and I were devastated by these losses. Even though we lived together, we didn't have the emotional capacity to support each other. I never felt like my feet were on solid ground until I moved to Miami after college. Miami to me represents a place of healing. I reinvented myself there. It was so refreshing to walk into a room and have no one know me or my past, but at least they knew how to pronounce my name. I was sitting around a table, hearing all of these people's stories and laughing and crying. I was like, oh my God, I'm totally not alone. All of these people had my same life. They all had to deal with a lot of the same stuff I did.
And all of a sudden I had this aha. Every joke, everything that everyone's saying tonight is about being an Enya, but I didn't have a word for it. This feeling that we are two people at the same time.
And I started getting napkins and started writing down the things that people said because I was determined to do a documentary because I'm like, how do I get this out to people? How do I share this? Because I just wanted to shout from the rooftops, like, you're not alone. I can see clearly now that fear and shame had a grip on me.
Like a strong grip on me?
And held me back.
And held me back.
Okay.
All right, quiet on set. All right, go ahead.
What I have for you today is a simple idea that will change the way that you see yourself in the world and the way that the world sees you. This is big. It has the potential to change who you are at the very core of your being. The pain that I had lived with for so long of not knowing where I fit in is actually central to the shared experience that defines first-generation American-born Latinos with a parent from a Spanish-speaking country. I had a similar but opposite experience in Puerto Rico. And hang on. Okay, you guys have to be quiet, okay? Can you please be quiet? Phoebe, can you sit down if you're gonna listen? Sorry. Let's do it again. This is hard to talk about.
It is, yeah.
Hi, I have an audience to you guys can hear all that stuff.
You don't have to worry about us.
I know, it just feels weird.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's do it.
You good?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
What's going on?
I don't know. It's just hard for me. Because I'm also just thinking about my family and I don't want them to get their feelings hurt, you know? I don't want them to feel bad about this.
Yeah. Take a few breaths. All right, guys. At the same time, here you go.
At the same time, I had a similar, but I can't even say this without crying.
You can. It's right there, and it's okay if you cry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. At the same time, I had a similar but opposite experience in the Puerto Rican community. I didn't feel accepted for who I was there either. I was either acting too white or my Spanish just wasn't good enough. Somehow, I wasn't Latina or Puerto Rican enough. Perhaps because I identified so deeply as Puerto Rican, this rejection from my own people, my own family, hurt the most.
Denise, I don't have my tissues with me. Thank you for being here with us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Bienvenida.
Thanks for inviting me.
I'm holding back my tears, to be honest with you. That was quite emotional. I'm sure many of us can relate to that as well. I know I certainly could. So you certainly had me very well engaged. Pero mira, tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. And I just want to let you all know that I can see your comments and I appreciate James. That was super nice. That was the last comment that I read. So thank you, James. You have no idea how much your comment just meant to me. So yeah, the film actually came out in 2016, so 5 years ago. And sorry to leave you hanging. I know some of you are probably like, wait, I want to see the rest of it, or at least hopefully that's the case. And I want you to know you can watch the rest of it at projectenya.com. And I'm actually going to go back specifically to that scene in a second, and because it illustrates so much what I'm here to share with you today. And that is that for me, getting this project done, getting this film made, I call myself a first-time Latina filmmaker, and it was a passion project for me. I desperately needed to get this off my chest. I needed to let as many people as could possibly know that they weren't alone, But it took me 17 years. And I'm going to share with you that part of the reason why it took me so long was because of what I'm going to share with you today. And it was because of a lack of experiencing a sense of enoughness. It was because of a lack of feeling like there was somewhere for me to belong. But the night that I had the idea was the night that I realized that I wasn't alone, which I feel very blessed to say this film does beautifully, is to show people that indeed they are enough and that they are not alone. And so early on, though, when we were out screening the film, after it came out in 2016, I was invited to all sorts of different places. I was invited to middle schools in border towns, to corporate events, to Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies. And one of the things that I found to be the most fascinating was that regardless of age, regardless of socioeconomic background, regardless of education, gender, and like all the factors, what people were telling me was the exact same. But not only that, they were actually languaging it with the same words. And it was these two things. I've never felt like I was enough. And I've always felt up until now and sincerely believed that I was alone. So, right? Total shocker. And what was fascinating about that was that regardless of the human being that was in front of me, they were saying the exact same stuff. And time after time, and I'm talking, we've done now events for thousands of people, about over 150 events, even virtually. And I probably heard that today, there's probably a message in one of my mailboxes saying this exact same thing. So I became obsessed with trying to understand why. Why was this the case? And we can say that there is an expression, and I'm going to start off by saying the beginning, and you type in the rest. Okay, so I can illustrate that. Ni de aquí, how does that go? Ni de aquí, what's the rest of that? Exactly. Now that was autocorrect, but I got you, Rosario. I got that. I got what you were trying to say. Ni de allá. Right. So we know this, right? When we say that, everybody knows it. Oh, and that's in Portuguese. Oh my gosh. So there you go. So it transcends countries and languages. So it basically means I'm not from here and I'm not from there. And it's this feeling that so many of us feel, whether we're an Enya, an immigrant, fifth, sixth generation. This is a feeling that seems to transcend multiple generations. But I will say it is the most acute with the Enya. And so if we define Enya as first gen born here or brought here at a very young age, it's the most acute and most painful, most challenging for this particular generation. And I know in education, Enyas are often called heritage Spanish speakers. So hopefully that describes it. And then actually watching the film describes it too. So like I said, I was fascinated with why is it that they're using the same words and that everyone seems to be having the same experience. And that also I am incredibly blessed that after 5 years, nothing has let up. If anything, more and more people continue to invite us to screen the film in their locations virtually and invite me to amazing events like this today. So why is that, right? Because it's one thing to know that it's happening, ni de aquí ni de allá. It's another thing to understand why. And then also, and what can we do about it, right? Because it's like, okay, I get that this is a thing, but like, how can we help people? And in your case, how can we help kids? And so here's what I learned. And it's best illustrated by asking everyone to just listen. I want you to listen to whatever's going on in the room that you're sitting in. Is your phone vibrating? Are you sitting outside? Are you hearing leaves swaying in the trees? Is anyone playing music where you are? Is there a TV on? It's totally silent here in the room that I'm in, but the room that I was in before, the AC was blaring. So why does this happen? It's because of what's happening in the background. And it's what's happening in the background all the time. And the thing is, we're not paying attention to what's happening in the background, right? What's happening in the background is just happening in the background. But this is what's happening in the foreground. And hello, Denise is talking and you're paying attention to me. And I thank you very much for that. And we have grown accustomed to ignoring what's happening in the background. The challenge is, though, is that from a very young age, what's happening in the background is always happening in the background. And it's what I call the Enya effect. And what the Enya effect is, it's always happening in the background, right? And it represents a conflict, an inner conflict. It represents two diametrically opposed ideologies coexisting in someone's brain at the same time. And so when we think about this, like, how does that feel? How could that possibly feel? I'm going to give you an example. So everyone here is Latinos, from what I understand. And so this is going to be very easy for you to answer. Who or what is the most important thing in the Latinx culture? Who or what is the absolute most important thing in Latinx culture? Family. Boom. Thank you, Isabella. Thank you very much. Family, we all know it. Sometimes people are like, do you mean your mother? And yeah, I mean that too, okay? So all the Latina mothers out there, I got you, because I'm one too. And we're considered family. But so we know this, right? And we look at this like it's the truth. Family first, right? Family is first. We all know this to be true. And I'm putting that in quotes because guess what? It's not true. It's true for us, but it's not true for my husband, who I call the gringo cowboy. He's from Oklahoma. Yes, I married a gringo. That's a whole nother story. If I asked him who or what was the most important thing for you growing up, what do you think he would say? And what do you think all gringos, and any gringos, thank you for not getting offended right now. What do you think that they would say? Who or what is the most important thing if you're not Latino? Let's call it mainstream culture. Who is the most important? Me. Yes. Myself. The individual. Yes. And isn't it even hard to even say that? Like when I'm in person with people, they're just like, oh, those gringos, they just make everything about them. Everything is always about you. You don't care about the group. You don't care about family, right? I know there's some people that are like, oh my God, can she see my reaction? Can she hear my thoughts? Yes, I can hear your thoughts. No, I can't hear your thoughts, but I do know what you're thinking because I've talked about this once or twice before. And so here's the thing to them, is it true or false that the self or the individual is the most important thing? Is it true that the individual is the most important thing? For someone, yes. Jenny, thank you. It's true. And I'm also going to say it in quotes, okay? It's true for them, but it actually isn't really true. What's interesting about this, and remember, the why does this happen and how can we solve it? lies in the understanding of what I'm telling you right now. Because gringos believe that the individual or the self is the most important thing. And because we Latinos believe that the family or the collective or the group is the most important thing, when there are children that have to navigate two different cultures, right? And they are not given a handbook. They're not given a handbook that says, hey, listen, we're collective. We prioritize family and your mother and all these things. You need to respect your elders and always be humble. And calladita te ves más que. Calladita te ves más. Anyone? Yes. Thank you, Erika. We know these things. You guys, we know these things. We know them from a very young age. And I'm testing you, okay? And you're getting an A. So great job. What I'm trying to show you is we learn these things at a young age. Every little girl knows that she's prettier when she's quiet. We learned that when we were 5 or younger, okay? That's the collective working. Now, am I trying to hate on collective or Latino culture? No, hello, this is Project Enya. We're all about embracing your Latinidad. And there are some norms that we subscribe to that we need to examine. And there's some things about the way that we do things inside of our culture that we need to, I'm going to say, rethink. Okay. And in this particular case, it's making sure that the children that we're raising and the children that we're teaching and the children that we're influencing understand that there are two different ideologies coexisting in their beautiful minds every single day. And acknowledging that is the what can we do part. Okay. So when we look at Latino ideology, the ideology that's dominant for Latinos, it's called collective. Collective meaning the group, the family, all of us, right? And it's kind of cool because we're really, really good at teams. We're really good at making sure that everybody over here knows that we're all over here, right? I mean, I don't know how many times you've probably heard it, but everyone's like, or not everyone, but my gringo friends, I love inviting Denise over. She always has a big hug for me whenever I see her. She's always so warm and fuzzy and always makes me feel so at home. Right? I love to say that that is Denise, but it isn't. It's my culture and it's your culture. And it's a beautiful thing. And it's a beautiful way that we make people feel, right? And there's this other thing going on in the background. There's this idea of what is right and what is wrong. And when I talk about right and wrong, it's prioritizing the family, prioritizing the group, respecting abuela, not talking when they talk, right? Giving reverence to our elders and staying humble. I mean, and so many other things. And you all can write down some of the other things that you know are very uniquely Latino, right? But if we were to look at my husband's point of view, the gringo cowboy, he prioritizes self. He wants to raise our daughters to be self-reliant, which is the name of the dominant ideology here in the United States, self-reliance. I don't need your help. I don't need you, right? I can do this myself, right? They also are taught how to self-advocate, right? Something that our culture, anybody have any choice words to say about the word selfish? Is it something that you love being called or something that you would absolutely never want to be called, right? I know the answer. That's why we actually called our podcast The Selfish Latino. Heart attack, right? Because I love poking the beehive. I love starting and sparking conversations that I believe that we need to have as a community. And I'm definitely not assigning this is right and this is wrong and they're right and we're wrong. That's not what this is about. This is about awareness, right? This is about what's there and what's in the background, but finally listening to it and hearing, that's interesting. I'm sending a double message to my own children. Maybe I'll fix that, right? And that's how we do it. And just so you know, what comes naturally to me is Latina mom. Always kiss mommy when we say goodbye or hello. Always hug mommy. Never disrespect mommy or daddy or abuela, right? And then they're looking at their friends behaving completely different. And my own daughters, I've got 2, they always say, Mom, you're so different than my friend's parents. And I'm like, well, who do you like better, huh? Because obviously Latina moms are better, right? I mean, that's across the board. We all know that to be true. And I'm not even going to put that into quotes. Okay. Just so you know where we are. I'm kidding, but you understand what I'm saying. Think about our children. Think about the kids in the districts that you work. Think about the kids that have the pressures of having to navigate. Wait, in a classroom, should I keep my mouth shut? Especially our young women, right? Should I keep my mouth shut? Is being pretty the priority? Should I had this, I was at a conference once and I overheard a conversation with some, I'm just going to say it because I feel like we're family, right? We're all family. Can someone just say yes so I can just say this? So there was some gringos at the table and then I was the Latina and there was I'm going to call her a gringo teacher. God, I hope I'm not crossing a line here. But anyway, she was like, I was overhearing a conversation and she said, yeah, I had a student that said that she couldn't turn her assignment in because of a family party. Can you believe that? And I was like, excuse me, what was the family party? And it was something about the abuela, some kind of celebration. And I'm just like, I hope that you didn't I hope she didn't get in trouble because in Latino culture, that is the priority. Celebrating her abuelos is the priority. It's actually more important than anything. So she was actually doing the right thing. So as I wrap up today, because I know hopefully I'm planting ideas that will spark conversations, right? How can we solve this problem? How can we address these challenges? How can we make sure that we're adding these conversations in about this and have this level of awareness when we're looking at the students that we're working with? And to be honest, looking at diverse staffing, right? Because remember, 5th grade Latinos say the exact same thing as 50-year-old Latinos. Doesn't matter. So here's what can we do? 3 things. First of all, with all the compassion in your heart, acknowledge that this is a thing. And if you can, this is the extra credit. Be vulnerable and be authentic. Be willing to go first. Be willing to say, I also feel this way. I also believe this was true. I also grapple with this, even to this day. And then third, make it a norm. Let's try to create this norm that says we're actually going to acknowledge this stuff. We're going to bring it to the surface. We're going to listen. We're going to try to hear what's happening in the background and then acknowledge it with words and then hopefully with actions. But most of all, what I want you to consider is how can you use this information and the hopefully many conversations that happen after this and consider that this is the key to belonging for everybody. Thank you so, so much.
Oh, you are so welcome. And you're right. It is the key to belonging. And we want to hear more from our participants. So we're going to give them the opportunity to share their thoughts, questions, and comments. So let's start off with, it's important to introduce our culture to others and not apologize for it. Denise, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And at the underneath that, like that kind of apologeticness is the lack of enoughness. And so it's almost like the thing behind the thing, because yeah, I would have loved to be unapologetically Boricua, right? When I was in 4th grade, bringing flan to my school event, but I experienced shame because nobody ate it. And so how can we empower kids to not be unapologetic? What I would say is to reinforce that they are not alone. And how do you reinforce that is by creating solidarity, meaning I also experience this too.
Wow, that's exactly right. Creating solidarity. I love that. Isabella?
I think that's a great segue into this question. How can we make sure that no other children hide this when they are at school? How can we make sure that they don't feel so all alone?
Well, I honestly feel like I could give I want to give a hug to whoever wrote this. So I just want to deeply acknowledge this question. And I think that there's some questions that are best left as questions, like inquiries, like how can we make sure is a fantastic question to kind of put on the wall somewhere, right? And so that it guides our decisions and it guides the things that we share, and it guides the level of authenticity and realness we teach with, we lead with. It's an incredible inquiry And I'm not sure that providing an answer would be the best. It would, but actually inviting that to be in the biggest letters possible, right? And for people to fill in the blank themselves, because we all know what we hold back. We all know that there are people that don't get to see, like you guys get to see me emotional. You guys get to see the total authentic me, right? And I'm sure if I walked past you today at a supermarket, this has been known to happen. I actually went to a bathroom in LA and someone hugged me at the sink while I was washing my hands, right? Because they saw the film and they connected with my authenticity and they felt like they knew me deeply, which is the coolest feeling ever, right? And that's the gift. It's not just for me to share, wow, this cool thing or funny/weird thing happened. I took it as a cool thing, right? But that you get to give that gift with the kids that you work with every single day. But there has to be a willingness for you to be open, to open and stay open. And that's a risk. It was a risk for me to include some of these scenes. And speaking of the one that we left off on, that scene was not specifically shot for the film. That scene was, as far as I was concerned, it could have been cut and no one would ever see it again, because I didn't want anyone seeing that I had a hard time reading a teleprompter. I didn't want anyone knowing that I didn't have childcare and I was actually watching my neighbor's kid at the same time as this whole film crew was at my house while we shot a video. I wanted everybody to see the Denise that you see in front of you now. Perfect in every way. I'm just teasing, but okay, you get that. There is a way that you're being in your life and at school and with the kids that's not authentic. So the question is, where can you bring more of you? Where can they see that person that doesn't have it all together? How willing are you to show the world who you really are behind who you believe that you should be? That's what will make the biggest difference. So, and honestly, I feel like I could talk about that for hours, but I hope that addressed it. And like I said, thank you very much for that comment and question.
Yeah, it goes back to ensuring that we're creating learning environments that are safe and welcoming and inclusive so that our students feel, that sense of belonging and feel comfortable enough to really show who they are. There are so many of them that are reserved and quiet, and not necessarily because they're not knowledgeable. It's just like you had mentioned earlier, a lot of their upbringing. So let's see, how can we bridge the gap with the second generation immigrants in our households so our kids can still connect and navigate their multiculturalism?
So how can we bridge the gap with the second gen? And so I'm going to assume that they mean, I'm just going to assume this. So if I'm wrong, let me know. This is the Enya, right? So our kids can connect and navigate. Yeah, again, another great question of the hour, I think that we can be really deliberate about passing down culture, and especially for the Latinx culture, right? And so much as the leaders here in the virtual room, we can embrace this ourselves. Like the way that we create space for someone to feel comfortable is we're actually willing to bring our most authentic self. That's what creates the space. The space isn't created with tactics. The space isn't created with like, oh, well, I read this in a book and I think this is going to work. Actually, the space is created when you choose to do the absolute hardest thing, which is show up 100% authentically and willing to create a space where they might be able to belong. And so let's say not knowing how to bridge the gap, but willing to step into the uncertainty, willing for other people to see you clunky, to see you wondering how best should I do this, willing to be watched and evaluated and potentially criticized, right? All of that creates trust. That makes people want to stand up, and the quietest kids want to be themselves. That's why when we're actually in a live environment, one of the number one things I hear is, it's so crazy. You know that guy who stood up, he said his name was Jose? Jose never talks. Jose doesn't talk to anybody. But today, Jose shared all this stuff, and now everybody loves Jose. Nobody knew Jose, right? Why do you think Jose stood up? He stood up because he felt safe, because I was acting crazy. because I was willing to act like a goofball. Okay. And that's what I'm telling you is the key. And it's not like it's your own version of that. It's really your own version of what you're unwilling to share with the world, which is much harder than a tactic. So yeah, that's what I would say.
As an Enya myself, I just want to say that I really appreciate your insight and that the piece that we got to see of your film and, you know, your answers to your questions have been very moving. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes. So for our next questions, how can one approach the families of children who are caught within both sets of cultural norms, especially if they don't agree with the gringo norms?
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for at least one other person saying gringo and helping me feel like I didn't make too much of a big mistake when I said that. So, okay. How can one approach the families of children who are caught? Well, here's the thing. I'm going to recommend that they watch the film. It's a tool. This film is a tool and it's an opening. It's a doorway to walk through for them to see a different point of view. Because as far as they're concerned, the way they see the world, and the easiest example is prioritizing family in the group. There's many other things that fall in line with that, but the way they see the world, the way we all see the world is what we believe to be true. Okay, this is how you do it. This is how you should act. This is how you handle the situation. No, this is how you do it depending on what ideology is a dominant ideology in your head. And so once families or parents of Enyas see the film, they realize, hang on a second, they start listening to what's in the background to bring something up from before. They start realizing there's another point of view here. They start considering my child might be experiencing this. You'd actually be surprised to hear that more than once or twice or 3 times over the last several years, I've actually been at an event with like live people. When they come up to me, sets of parents say, we love you, we love your film, we want to give you a hug, but we need to go home and apologize to our children. Because they don't get it until they get it, right? And so it's super important to acknowledge that there really isn't a right or wrong. It's really just, is it distinguished or not? Like, is that a belief system I hear, or is that the truth?
So I appreciated what you said about challenging certain norms. What advice would you give to young people today who may want to challenge norms but feel intimidated to do so?
Yeah, well, I'll say, guess what? Me too. You know what? It's really, really scary. And so whoever is asking that, I would say, I stand with you in wanting to challenge those norms. There's some norms that are awesome. And Latina moms are the best type of moms, is one that absolutely should not be changed. Okay, just for the record. But there's others that do, I would say, need an adjustment or an upgrade, we'll say. And it's very difficult. And so here's what I do. And again, it's probably not going to be very popular. But first thing is to recognize, where am I not being tolerant? Where am I not being accepting? Where am I being fixed? Where am I asserting something has to be a certain way because I said so, because this is how I see the world and that's how it should be, right? And recognizing that challenging institutional norms, challenging cultural norms is one of the most audacious things that any human being can do. And it's literally what our project does. We embrace all that works and all that is amazing and all that we love. And I'm so biased because I do, I'm Latina, I'm Puerto Rican. I think it's the best food. You can't, I'm not gonna let you win that argument. It's the best, right? And then there's just some norms that I'm just like, we got to stop telling our kids that. We have to stop teaching our kids that, right? I am not popular in some places, believe it or not. I get hate. People question what I'm saying. And I won't stop because I've had the chance over the last 5 years to meet some incredible human beings, young, old, in between, educated. I mean, every single different type of human being I've met. And there's something that is the same. And this thing, this pain that we all share, someone needs to address it. Someone needs to say, guess what? You are not alone. You are enough. And I'm going to stand right next to you and we're going to figure this out. We're going to reinvent something that works for all of us.
Yes, absolutely. I think, what do you think about this comment that says it's important to validate who we are in the room of sharing of cultural norms in humorous ways? Yeah, just leaving it at that comment, validation for Latinos in general.
But I'm all about validation. Actually, the entire premise of the film was to validate the very experience of feeling alone and to heal a generation. So yeah, when people feel validated, like I'm not alone, wait a second, I'm not the only one, it's empowering.
That's exactly right. I mean, and we need to continue to empower our students and make sure that they are feeling validated and acknowledged and seen. It's very, very important. Like I said earlier, when we started this session, we were talking about having mirrors and windows and ensuring that our students are reflective in the learning experience that they're having, every day that they're in school. Wow, Denise, we are out of time, but I can tell you a lot of what you discussed is just resonating with so many of us. We appreciate your time and you being here with us. Any last comments?
Oh, I just appreciate any opportunity to share. I appreciate those of you who maybe feel validated right now with some of my ideas, however challenging they are. And I also appreciate those who maybe disagree with me, just for listening, because this all starts with just our community coming together to solve our own problems, right? That's where I'm very collective, is let's all just go over here as a group and see if we can figure this one out ourselves, because I sincerely believe once we do, or at least kind of get a handle on it, and education is such an important piece of that we can't be messed with. It's like we will be unmessable with, okay? And I'm just standing with all of you out there, being with the kids, fighting the good fight. And I want to invite you all to watch the rest of the film and reach out if you have any questions on how you can expose your kids to this film and mostly to this conversation.
Well, you are just amazing and so authentic and so genuine. Thank you, Denise, por estar aquí con nosotros. Te lo agradezco mucho. Besos.
Take care and have a wonderful day.
Gracias. And now we are going to segue into this phenomenal poet and writer, Natasha Carrisoza. Her work is deeply rooted in her childhood and life experiences. She was raised as the daughter of a fierce African-American mother and Mexican father. Her writing reflects these two rich cultures. She is an author of Mejía Africana, Heavy Light and Crown, and her work has been published in Manteca. She is a cool speaker, a youth engagement company that works with thousands of students around the country each year. Please help me welcome Natasha Carrisoza. Bienvenida.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, everybody. I didn't have my camera on, but I was listening and reading. I am a lover of words. My heart, I always say this before I speak, my heart is beating fast. I was earlier in the day working with some students in Philly. Later on, it's gonna be New York. But right now, it's gonna be us. I was asking Patricia when she invited me, well, what do you want me to talk about? What do you want me to say? And she said something that I hardly ever hear. I don't even know when I hear it. Just be yourself. Just be yourself. Those two, Philly and New York that I was telling you about, my son is graduating from the 2nd grade. I'm a mother, virtual school. Stuff is going on all of the time. I went outside to quiet myself, to ground myself, and I couldn't help myself but keep writing words. And I wrote, my name is Natasha Marie Berber Carrisoza. I would like to know your name. Even though I see it in the chat, What is the nickname you were given? What does your name mean? For me, names mean everything. I was called many names. Some of my friends know me as Natty, Natty Poet, the kids know me, Mama Natty, Tasha, Natalia Maria when I was in trouble. But I was called many names. Being poor, Black, brown, both of my fathers are Mexican from Mexico City, and try to explain that as a kid. Okay, so which one is my mom's Black. And what is your dad? My dad's Mexican. But I thought you said you had a real dad. He's Mexican too. Your mama really liked the Mexicans, don't you? They called me Pepper Belly. They called me Mutt. They called me some names that's the reason that my heart is beating fast, honestly. Because it's hard to talk about myself. It is very hard to talk about myself, but I tell the kids all of the time, everything. I tell them the truth. I am called by spirit, by trees, blood, people, children, stars, music, ancestors, God, water, smoke, sage. These are my words. This is the well that is me. Mehi Africana. Born with two tongues, I speak of, hablo de, I write of, escribo de. Mi vida, cultura colorada, pintada, painted a picture para que puedan ver that I am Mehi Africana. That's half and half, but whole as in an entire empire of Aztec warriors breathe orange red fire into my lungs. That's half and half, but whole as in an entire tribe from the Congo rained blue-black blood into my soul. I am that red, brown, black sister thinking and breathing them poetic thoughts, that prolific prophetic poet with them red, brown, twisted locks. I see and record the world in black ink, like the skin of my people. I am fierce, like panthers, militant with pen as they be, hot water, cornbread, oxtails, and collard greens, chanting down Babylon with Jah, Rastafari beats. I'm ghetto soliloquies of Haitian refugees spoken underneath Harlem's balconies. I represent the black freedom of which the Negro spiritual speaks. I am all things black. And all black things I be. Yo soy la morena, la poema que despierte su mente, que enciende su alma con papel y pluma. I can make the sun and moon rise at the same time. I am el viento que viene de México, el este y el oeste. Este es la verdad. I'm the song on Pancho's lips as he sits and eats un burrito de chorizo con huevo, praying for a job to feed his niños. I am salsa, picosa, como Willie Colon, Frankie Ruiz y Celia, una mariposa in May. And may I say that brown and proud is what I will remain, staining this life with my mark, because you see, my Cico is just as bad as my bark, because, porque I am una niña del Yucatan, Chichen Itza, Quetzalcoatl kissed my mother, and here I am, landed on this land with pen in hand to tell the tales of mi gente. Mayans, Aztecs, and Incans, roofers, day laborers, carden lo que sea. Es la misma cosa, sangre. I'm una niña de mi país, una de una raza tan fuerte, una niña de México, y así me quedo. Born with two tongues, I speak of, hablo de, I write of, escribo de, mi vida, cultura colorada, pintada. Painted a picture para que puedan ver that I am Mehi Africana. I am so overcome with emotion. I've read that poem in Paris, Madrid, Barcelona, New York, street corners, Houston, all over the place, and I have never experienced what I'm experiencing now. That imposter syndrome, that counting the people that look like me in the room, that's real. I thought about saying, hey, I'm grateful for a seat at the table. But no, that's not true. Yo soy la mesa. Yo soy la mesa. I would like you to write your yo soy statement in the chat. You are a beating heart. Thank you, Victoria. Qué poderosa. I love that. Wow. I'm going to continue. Put your yo soy statement. Now, I don't know, but they were asking earlier, Denise was asking, like, who is the most important in the, you know, when you think of the sacred people? People said family, and I heard mom. I don't know about your mom, your tia, your abuelita, even you. I don't know if they can cook, but I know my Black mother can cook. My Black mother can cook. This is called 3600 block of Willing. In the 3600 block of Willing Avenue, I watched Ma travel from stove to sink to refri to mesa, preparing meals that any Mexican would, juro por Dios, never came from a Black woman. Chuletas de puerco, arroz y pollo, fideo con limón, pozole, frijoles, lentejas, cualquier cosa, Ma could hazlo. Religiously, she would rinse the smell of garlic and comino from her hands, baptized in the sink's cool water. Every 4 or 5 minutes, she would dry them in the brick red apron that was dusted in flour from the pork chops. And I sat on my brown bar stool. Its cracked vinyl crown pinched my thighs in the summertime when I sat too long, cutting and chopping cebolla, jalapeno, tomate, aguacate. El pico de gallo was loud, and so was Frankie Ruiz. When he sang, so did we. Pero lo dudo. Feet and fingers danced to the beat of the conga. Timbales and horns flooded the air, flirting with the sound of garlic frying. Outside, Mayo screamed at fellows to run, corale, from Isaac, because he was the wind. And if he caught you, ya se acabó la cosa. Gordo di Pana played in a pizza jugando a game of marbles contra green army men. Daddy had shown the boys his game early one morning before beds made and faces washed, a game que jugaron in the DF. Before he, Cheto, Chino, y Chavo, those were real people in my life. He, Cheto, Chino, y Chavo got here tomando course like a mi tía Chavo, discussing the affairs of the roofing business. Back in the kitchen, Frankie was whispering when Ma threw the tortillas on the stove 4 and 5 at a time. They blackened and bubbled, the smell of burning cornfields. I set the table with blue and green plastic cups and forks and plates that didn't match. Ya estuvo. Ya llegó la hora. It was time to eat. I danced inside, proud that this Black woman, mi madre, showed me my heritage while dancing and making wide-eyed salsa in the 3600 block of Willing Avenue. So in the poetry world, we snap. I hope I got a couple of virtual snaps out there. Mi corazón, standing ovation. That's the thing about the Zoomlandia. You never know what's happening on the other side. But thank you for your words. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Natasha, ya estuvo y ya llegó la hora. You're right on with that. Ya llegó la hora. Snap.
Thank you. Patricia, like, I don't want to really dive into it, but I'll put a little stack of books over here. This little brown girl from the south side of Fort Worth wrote a poem in the 5th grade because this little güerita named Amy wrote a poem. She was blonde, hazel eyes, and I said, I want to do that. If she can do it, I can do it. Wrote the poem, took it to my mom. Mom, I wrote a poem. She said, your father writes poems. It's like, Daddy writes poems. He can't even speak English. Daddy writes poems. She said, no, your real father writes poems. I knew he had the same last name as me. I knew we lived in the same city. But other than that, I didn't know much. So I write to find myself, and I find myself in some of these books now. I find my family, my tribe, my culture. I honor who I am in a different way, with the words, with the sound, and the power. I have to be honest. There's a poem that I want to do for you, but I'm not sure if I should do that. What do y'all think? Should I do it? So the deal is, I performed all over the place. Y'all throw it in the chat. Do it, Natty. I performed all over the place. And this, the skin that I'm in, This right here is a threat sometimes. I was in a classroom teaching creative writing, and this little girl, she said, I was just standing there, she said, "Don't make that face, you're scaring me." And I didn't even give her the chocolate, but I wanted to. I've been seen as the angry Black woman in many spaces. This time I was the angry Black woman. This is called ABC Me. In poetry, they have these things called list poems. To me, it sounds like a grocery store list: eggs, beans, tortillas, whatever. But I said, if I ever write a list poem, I'm going to play with the ABCs. Okay, Oscar, I'm doing it. I'm doing it, Oscar. ABC me. Even when I was starving, I was eating. Inhaling words like a kid with a lunch card, like this is a meal I might miss up. Like I better eat up because life be hard. Like a kid sucks up alphabet soup, I sucked up A, brown girl with good hair and pretty skin I didn't know how to live in. B, in the second grade, combing my brother's hair on Fairmont Street, get him ready for a day without me, walk him to school and back before my bus came for me. C, I had grown woman responsibilities before I could even spell the word. C, I knew struggle on a first name basis. The word class is segregation, 11 letters to kill a nation. Before I turned 11, I was D, divided, taken from my people and put on a bus, shipped to manifest, destined E as an empty, as in everything that looked like me. Elena, my Black girl, my mama, F, full of her struggle, grown men touched her and she made sure they would never touch me. G, gangster good, God, greatest to ever live, good thing, love me. She said the best thing in her is me. Me is on the back porch. Porch monkey be climbing these white people heels like a black spider, they called her. Me is sacred geometry. Me is nothing without her. Me is nothing they can kill. Me is Prince, I'm going down. Me is anything I want to be. Sometimes the king is a woman, someone once said. Me is a few fish and a few loaves of bread. Me is H heaven when I'm walking, hoodie and some Skittles when I Trayvon Martin. Grow a garden when I Eric Gardner. Grow a garden so we can eat. After we Emmett Till the soil before the breath takers take my breath, I can't even breathe. But I believe in Black people for the life of me. I'm what is right, I'm what is left. I'm Southside poet, I'm who feels it, knows it. This is me eating words of the dark like a white man's past. This is for the letter I, as in God I trust, knowing trouble don't last, as in I will live, I will last, I will write because I must, because I am sacrificed. I am the lives those cut too short, too brown, too Black, too Southside, too Negro, too cut down before they grow, too cotton field, too Black like tar, too Black star line, and too Black lives matter. Be writing my story, our story, because we matter. See, because I was a Black, brown girl from the South Side and they told me I didn't matter. Showed me I didn't matter. But I look like my mom and them. Them is my brothers and cousins and them. My people and sisters and them. Code switching. My people are divine strugglers, educated hustlers, see cold-blooded conquerors and see they matter to me. They, we, I. They, we, I. They, we, I matter to me. I matter to me. I matter to me. What y'all think of that? I got one more and I'm gonna get ready for this Q&A. I told my mom years ago, Mama, I want dreadlocks. She said, what for? You already got a crown. That's the title of my book. That's not what I'm gonna read from. There's this, Patricia mentioned Manteca. There's a collection of these, it looks like this, collection of Afro-Latino poets. I didn't even know there was a such thing as Afro-Latino until about 5 years ago. I was like, that's me. You mean I'm not a unicorn? So I submitted, and here it is. Thank you, Oscar. See what you made me do? I didn't think it was gonna get in, but it got in. Pennies in my blood. There are pennies in my blood. I could lie and tell you I do not know where they came from or how they made their way down my throat and into my belly, but the truth is I swallowed them as a child. Once playing a game in the dark with Maria Elena, waiting on our mothers to finish casting spells on strange men. The men were always there, drunk on Budweiser and the Spanish that spilled from my Black mother's tongue like honey. I grew with honey and peacock feathers in my hair. I am child of Oshun. There are pennies in my blood. I could close my eyes and pretend I never saw the altar in Mimi's apartment, the one she shared with Malena. The one she shared with Malena. I was mesmerized by this Cuban woman soldier who donned an afro like halo. Mimi loved Malena like she worshiped Ogun. Mi mama made sure I knew the hands of sacrifice, the eyes of truth. When I was young, I reached out to the iron in my blood. The popcorn and copper on Mimi's altar laid out like birthright. My mother told me not to play with. She must know I was born with a machete in my mouth. I witnessed her cut men, split them in two like firewood. Ogun is not like man. He is not to be toyed with. I was born with pennies in my mouth. I cannot explain how I knew to call the name of Elegua when the chains came, to call the name of mi hermana Giselle. I cannot explain how I knew to take the egg and roll it down from our faces to legs, heads to feet, and break the yoke at the foot of a tree. I cannot decipher the copper song that ran from my tongue like flame. It shook steel from drum, calling the name of ancestors one by one out of shadows and back into my bones. Oh, Yemaya, Yemaya. There are pennies in my mouth. My head and neck are on fire. Bring the coco y arroz. Boil the eggs, build a tower for Obatala to restore peace. I cannot explain how pennies made their way into my blood. I was fire before man knew flesh. I was Shango chant before the slave ships came. I counted pennies with God before I knew my name. My name is Natasha Carrisoza. Thank you for having me.
Natasha Carrisoza. All right, I know we've got lots of comments, thoughts, questions. Let's hear it. James, ready?
I need some water.
Yeah, that was beautiful. And there's nothing we can do to capture how awesome that was, but I'm sure everyone's got something stirring in their minds right now. So please click on that link, jump into the thought exchange, share your thoughts, your questions, how you're feeling, whatever is in your heart and on your mind right now. And I'm going to share my screen for those of you who are using your cell phone. Again, we'd love to get everyone sharing your voice and your perspective in this conversation. So please do jump into the exchange. We would love to hear the question on your mind and try to rate as many thoughts as you can.
Patricia, did I say thank you? Did I say thank you? You said this was an amazing event, and it is.
It is an amazing event because at the end, we're really hoping that it's going to benefit our kiddos, nuestros niños. Because there's so many that don't have a voice or feel as though that they don't have a voice. And we need to make sure and reassure them that they do have a voice and let them know that they are, seen and that they do matter.
Absolutely.
And when that's me in the book, I'm sure there's many of our kids that are just, feeling the same way when they see themselves in a textbook and get just as excited. This was most definitely a powerful session. We live by words. It is not true that words don't hurt us. Your words empower.
Thank you for that. I believe in something and I try to teach the young people and teach myself. When you have a word and you combine it with sound, that equals power.
Let me bring in my co-host because get this, Natasha. Isabel Ramirez is our student poet of the Southeast. Actually, she's the national winner for the student poet of the Southeast.
Hello, it's really actually a pleasure meeting you. And I just want to say, as someone who's also been involved in poetry, poets like you are part of the reason that I am so inspired to write poetry for myself. And I got into the community of slam poetry watching poets like you. So I just wanted to say that and how grateful I am to share this space with you. So I want to ask one of these questions. Can you think of the moment that gave you the confidence to be so passionate and proud of who you are?
Yes, absolutely. But at the time, I didn't think it was the moment. So that Mehi Africana poem, I had written it. And there's this place in New York called the New Yorican Poets Cafe. It's like the poets' mecca. If you get to perform there, it's everything. I got on the list. They called my name. I turned this color. I'm not this color, but this was the color I turned when I got on the stage. After that, I was like, you can't tell me nothing. I did it. It was a scary moment, but a memorable moment. I think that would be one of the moments. Thank you for saying that I inspired you to feel proud of who you are.
The most other important thing that we need to make sure that we highlight is the fact that we can really be creative and think outside the box when we're doing our fine arts classes. I mean, look at the amazing opportunity for someone to showcase and highlight their culture and their identity and their traditions just through poetry. So look at Isabella, fascinated. She is a very amazing poet herself and also does that bilingualism embedded within her poetry. So let's see what else they have. It says, oh, look at that. How did you find your voice?
I lost it twice. I had an opportunity and I was afraid because I was a single mom working 2 jobs and doing poetry on Tuesday nights. That's not for me. So I had this opportunity and I disappeared for 2 years. I lost my voice for 2 years, didn't hit a stage, didn't go anywhere. And then the second time was, and the main reason that I shed some water is my mom. When my mom left the earth, I lost my voice, my mind, my words, my sound, and my power, but I found my crown. That's a good question.
What would you do if you didn't have words like this? How would you express what is inside of you?
Well, you saw me reciting the poems. I would still write the poems. I have over 700 poems written in my phone. I do workshops. So the words will, for me, there is no life without words. So if I didn't have the voice, it would be on paper. I'd have to write on cave walls like they used to. But it has been a dream of mine to paint one day.
Wow. Fire. I saw wows and I saw fires and amazing and inspirational. And the last question, how do you feel about the Mexican and African community not always being accepted of each other? Both have so much in common and can contribute to society and each other culturally.
It bothers me, and I'm putting it lightly. It enrages me sometimes because I am Black and I am brown, and I have been thrust into situations to bridge the gap. But if my brown father can love a Black woman and create this beautiful, no, it's possible. It's possible to love one another. We just have to listen to one another. We do have a lot in common and contribute to society. Ojalá one day. It's getting better, I think, in some ways.
Listening, leaning in, and learning from each other. That's what it's all about. Natasha, oh, wow. Just wow. Everybody keeps saying wow. So inspirational. You are beautiful. You are definitely talented. Thank you so much for spending some time here with us. You certainly just triggered lots of emotion, positive emotion. And thank you for acknowledging the way that our kids can also be as creative as you. Really just taking advantage of those arts and really just celebrating their culture through the arts.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, every one of you. We were kids once. What if we had, as kids, who we are now? If that makes sense. I wish I had this when I was growing up, but I'm glad I have it now. So thank you again for having me. Yo soy la mesa.
De nada, Natasha. Muchas gracias. Wow. It's just going to get better as we keep pushing forward. Now we have an amazing author of over 150 children's books written in English and Spanish. Isabel Campoy is recognized as a speaker, a researcher, a scholar devoted to the study of language acquisition in Latino children's literature. Among her many accolades are the Ramon Santiago Award from NAVE, the National Association of Bilingual Education, and the Tomás Rivera Literature Award. And as well as, she didn't come alone, we're thrilled to have Alma Flor Ayla. She is the professor at the University of San Francisco. She's an international award-winning author of over 200 books for young readers and a leading mentor and philosopher of bilingual education in the United States. The La Jolla Marymount University has created the Alma Flor Ayla for Social Justice Award. And get this, she is the recipient of the Pura Belpré Award, Christopher Award, Virginia Hamilton Award, among many others. Gracias, señoras, por estar aquí con nosotros. Bienvenidas.
Muchas gracias, es un verdadero placer estar con todos ustedes. Mi nombre es Isabel Campoy.
Y yo soy Alma Florada y estoy igualmente, primero que nada, fascinada por las dos presentaciones que hemos recibido de Denise con un extraordinario film y de Natasha con esa pasión por el lenguaje. Yo, como ella, creo también que se vive en las palabras, que son las palabras lo que nos alimenta, lo que nos da fuerza y lo que nos define. Ahora, precisamente quisiéramos hablar cómo podemos llevar a nuestros niños a sentir esa misma fuerza, integridad, seguridad de ser quienes son. Cómo podemos ayudarlos a desarrollar esta seguridad en sí mismos y luego a reconocer la importancia de compartirlo. Es importante saber quiénes somos, pero también el ser capaz de decir quiénes somos.
In English. In English.
Oh, all right. I will change languages. It has been very moving and inspiring to watch Denise film and to listen to Natasha share her passion for words, her understanding and belief that we live in words, that we are nourished, supported, created in a way by the words we embrace and use. And what we would like to do now is to talk about how our children can develop that same sense of self, that same strength of identity, that same passion for our culture, and the capacity to share it. The understanding that it's important that we recognize ourselves as the authors of our lives, but also that we become the authors of our story, the narrators, the sharers of who we are, what are our dreams, and how we're walking towards them. And that is what we will be doing in the next few minutes.
And I would like very much to go forward in this PowerPoint, but I don't have the, our principles are based on the transformative educational principles of Paulo Freire. We will go forward, and whoever is clicking, can it pass I don't know how to go to the next slide. And we are based on constructivist theory, and we pass to the next, and multiculturalism, and we pass to the next, and anti-bias education, and aesthetics, and next, critical pedagogy, and next, feminism, womanism theory, bilingual education, and critical theory. All of these has been put into a book some years ago entitled Authors in the Classroom, but we know that we are very short of time today, and we want to make a bridge to the two fabulous speakers that we had here today, Denise and Natasha, that were actually speaking exactly about this. And Alma Flor has said it. What we want is, how do we bring these to the level of the child, the level of the teacher, the family, and the child. So we will go, and we wrote this book when we looked like that some years ago. Can we pass to the next? Yes, developing self-esteem through voice. Like Denise said before, our voice matters and our lives matter too. So history, I say, history belongs to those who write it. And we want to write, and we are going to provide you with just very simple examples. Can we go to the next one? And I will share with you Eloise Greenfield, that probably you all know, and this wonderful poem that Denise said many times, Natasha too, write, I am. Well, here is the poem of Eloise Greenfield. And she said, when I am by myself and I close my eyes, I am a twin, I'm a dimple in a chin, I am a room full of toys, I am a squeaky noise, I am a gospel song, I am a gong, I am a leaf turning red, I am a loaf of brown bread, I am a whatever I want to be and anything I care to be. But when I open my eyes, what I care to be is me. What other thing, what more precious, beautiful thing to say about our color, our skin, to say that I am a loaf of brown bread. What better way to speak about our interior life, spirituality, than say that I am a gospel song. And okay, based on Eloise by myself, we have asked others, have asked teachers to make very simple books of who they are. So we will go forward and we will see how people have turned these into books.
Okay. There are, of course, many ways to talk about ourselves, and we can use multiple metaphors like Eloise Greenfield has done. But what we're trying to promote with this is, first of all, that we create a community in the classroom where everyone is defining themselves so that we get to know the truth of each other. That this happens better when it's modeled by the teacher, when it's the teacher who, breaking away from any fear, takes the responsibility of becoming an author and sharing a book created by her or him to the students, and that then this goes to the home and invites the parents to recognize their role there as the first and more permanent teachers of their children, and also create their book. This is a very simple example. We can see next page of I am, based on relationships. And we like to promote this at the beginning because we all have relationships in our families. We are in our lives. We're all sons or daughters, brothers, sisters, nephews, cousins, uncles, aunts, friends, things that is very easy to talk about, and that allows to create a very powerful and personal book that then can be easily replicated at home by the parents, because we would like to see more of an equal level between the classroom and the home. And when we draw on things in which the parents are at the same human level as the teachers, we can achieve that.
So we go forward, and we have more examples of I am a mother and these are my children. We go forward. And then I am a granddaughter, and we go forward, and we have all of these into a Chinese example, and with all the metaphors of the bamboo. And then we ask you, who are you? And we ask you to take a piece of paper and write just the first words, I am, I am, I am, and bring the beauty of who you are. And then put it all together, create a cover, put your face all over the place and show it to your students, and ask your students to listen to your first I am, and then ask your students to write based on yours, their own, and then take your book and their book so that the parents will also write about who they are.
And I would like to emphasize.
Yes, if we could go forward.
Yeah, I would like to emphasize that this process has no limit of age. It has been done with preschool children, with children in elementary school, in high schools, and I use it with my doctoral students at the University of San Francisco, where at the beginning of each course, I had everybody write their I am poem to begin to acknowledge who they are and what they were bringing to the class, and that we could build our community from that. You will find that these 10 topics that we present as the simplest and easier to begin with, not in any way as a limit of everything that you can write, are developed in a website, www.authorsintheclassroom.com. It's a book. It's a website based on the book, but there you will find explanations of how to elaborate each of these units and examples made by teachers, by parents, and by children from multiple places. We have been sharing this process for over 20 years throughout the world. Certainly most of the states in the United States and places in many other parts of the world.
Yeah, and the wonderful thing is that you will be able, definitely, you will be able to find there a very simple way to do all of these. So I am going to ask to pass to the next, and you can have there the ABC books, and of course in these examples are the A for adoption, and it's a beautiful book on adoption. We can go to the next. And more and more, please go forward. Please go forward. And in here, in A Person in My Life, we have a very wonderful example. Yes.
Yes. Every one of us has important people in our lives, but most likely those people will never be the protagonist of a book, because no one will write a book about them unless we do. And this is an invitation for all of us to identify those important people in our lives, to write books about them, and then to have students of any age do the same about someone who's important to them. And if you would
pass all of these, pass, okay. Yeah, you can pass and pass and pass, okay. And then we will
maybe just wait there. This was a teacher talking about her father, and she ends up saying, we observed his latest birthday just a few short months ago. He's with us, but he's not. And what he's thinking, we don't know. We observed my father's birthday, blew out candles, and went on. But it's really not a party when the honored guest is gone. And the only explanation for this is right there on that logo of the Alzheimer's Association. And it was very meaningful for this teacher who's been suffering about the loss of her father's true self, lost into an Alzheimer's mind, to be able to write this book acknowledging who has been for her all her life, and then facing that pain that she's currently suffering. I see many things. I'm just taking a minute to say this. As in many things I've done in my life, I've been a grief counselor, and I decided to learn to be that because I learned that every classroom is touched statistically every year with at least one death of somebody close to the students in that classroom. And yet we shy away from talking about pain, suffering, death in the classrooms. And we would be healthier, all of us, if we were more open in acknowledging those aspects of our lives also.
So we are going to show you a very simple sample of how to write. So if we go to the next one, you will see that what we are going to suggest to you is that you think on a person, you think about someone, piensen en alguien que aman profundamente, and then write a book just saying, I hear. And what do you hear of this person, smell of this person, feel, see, remember, imagine? I am going to share to finish this presentation, and they probably have realized that we are rushing, but we have 18 minutes and we have to finish this in giving you an example that you can take home. Please take home. And I am going to just present to you the example of my mother. I wrote this about my mother. So next. I hear. No, please go back. Yes, I hear her telling an advice for each ocasión. Haz bien y no mires a quién. A quien madruga, Dios le ayuda. Her lessons carried in my heart throughout life. Next. I smell the rich flavors that come from her kitchen. Tortillas, garlic, olive oil. A feast made up with the simple ingredients she can afford. I see the smiles that her generosity brings to the face of others after a hug, a word of hope, and the 1,000 acts of solidarity she spreads naturally, daily. I believe that she has the power to make everything good happen, the strength to pull the days from valleys to mountaintops, just with a touch of her faith. I admire her little hands. How could they build such firm bridges over the turbulent waters of her life? Such little hands. I wish I had not taken for granted that she knew I loved her and that I had written these words for her before. I am with her, although she's not, but these words will be read by her grandchildren and her memory will live on. As such is the miracle of the written word. We have finished. We leave you with that. Please write those wonderful, wonderful things that you have about all the people that deserve to have a book.
We must wish for utopia. We may never reach it, but our steps will go always in the right direction.
All right.
I thank all of you for who you are and what you do. And I hope that you see all the seeds that you're planting grow and bloom. You'll never know how many people you are transforming. Those that you have interacted with directly and those they will interact with. And this will go on for generations because you are who you are.
And an author soon. So thank you very much, Patricia. Muchas gracias por invitarnos. Y aquí estamos en medio de esta tarde encantadora.
No, gracias a ustedes. Ahora vamos a dejar la audiencia hacer unas preguntas. So I see the amazing comments from so inspiring ladies. Thank you so much. To amazing thoughts about mothers. Thank you in helping us believe that we can also write these. So Senora, let's talk about a little bit about, I love the fact that you were highlighting the different ways that our teachers can help our students to highlight their culture and their identity, their diversity, their ethnicity, their race through writing. The fact that you had that example of who you are. Do you want to elaborate a little bit further with regard to that?
Well, there is definitely the opportunity to think in silence. When you write in silence, and the first things that come to your mind sometimes are those that worry you, that do not sustain you in life. And then you have the amazing strength in solitude to find the words that define who you are. And I want to reinforce that sense of history belongs to those who write it, that unless nobody will ever know who you are, and that your words matter, and that once they are in a paper, you don't know who is going to read them, but someone is going to read them, and you are going to establish a communication with those other people that are also looking and finding who they are through words. And precisely the opportunity that we are talking about here is one in which not only the teacher, but the teacher sharing with the children and the children sharing with the parents to have a community of transformation through the words, thinking about who we are and that we belong. We belong on the page, we belong in society, we belong in our communities. And that is reinforced and strengthened when we put the roots of who we are into paper.
And also, who were the people that existed so that we can exist? Our grandparents, our great-grandparents, those that came ahead of us. I have found the words, the written words of my mother, my aunts, my grandparents, things that never got published, but they were put in writing, and not with their generations later, for the generations that exist now. When something is written, you have no idea how far it can go. In time and distance, there is this wonderful site of Academia Educativa that collects academic papers from all over. And if you give them your name, they notify you every time that something appears with your name. Well, they just sent me a paper from University in Istanbul, quoting some of my work. How could I ever imagine that something I write would go that far to country with another language, and yet interested on what I was saying about reading. So
what I would like to add something to these, and it is the fact that sometimes we are completely, unaware of the importance of words, both orally, because when Natasha was speaking her words, when she was telling her poetry, she made us all feel what she was feeling and be what she was being. And in this case, I think that we want to make sure that that books are not written. Together we have written almost 150, and then you have written another 60, and I have written some others. It's just because we are very old and because we write for children, and books for children are very short. But in any case, what we want to share is that books are not written. What you write is one sentence, and then a paragraph, and then a page, and at the end you have a book. If someone tells you, write a book today, say this is crazy. Start with a poem and make that each line with a photograph, a page, and put a cover and your name in the cover, and you have a book. Also, write a copyright, because you don't know where that book will go. So you want to make sure that will, and dedicate the book. You have no idea how many wonderful breaches. Can we tell them about the very fun thing that occurred to us once, that this person came and said, you have no idea, this was a class, and every day we had a book to write, and it came the day in which they were writing a person in my life, and this person came and said, you have no idea what has happened to me. I thought during the evening, whom was I going to write the book about? And I said, my mother-in-law and I don't have the best of relationships. And then I wrote about her in all the wonderful ways in which I could think. And now we are making bridges towards the future. So sometimes it's remembering someone, and some of the times it's repairing the relationship with someone. But the written word is powerful.
My co-host here, student Isabel Ramirez, is a fabulous writer and poet. What are your thoughts? What are your questions coming from the student perspective?
Definitely. I think one of my questions would be, of course, getting into that writing space requires vulnerability, both from, I think, teachers and students. So how would you recommend that teachers can, help promote that students are vulnerable and are, willing to share things that they might not otherwise share in writing?
Well, I think that the example of the teacher is very valuable. I think that there is a book every teacher should write, which is I Was Not Always a Teacher. Because young children have the notion that people are, divided, just like cats and dogs are different species, maybe children and adults are different species. But when someone close to them, as the teacher, is willing to say, well, I was an elementary school children, and these are things that happened then. And then I was in high school, and then I did some artwork on the summer, and then maybe I was, doing certain things before I went to college. And then the idea of giving the students the gift of seeing progress in life, of seeing the development of a life is essential, because they don't have that model, because they have not grown enough to know that. And when they know that if you're honest and you tell about your failures and you talk about your mistakes and you talk about things that you would do different now and how they all have served you to learn and grow, that will facilitate that they're more willing to also share. But it has to start with honesty. The power of these books is authenticity. It's not, children in classes have been making books forever, but it's the content of authenticity what we're emphasizing here. Talk about what is meaningful, what sometimes hurt, what sometimes you wish could be different. Talk about that. And if you give the parents the opportunity in that way, can I share something? I'd love to share with you briefly something. I've done a lot of work with migrant families. And I would gather with the parents at night and we would read children's books, and then we will give them blank books to go home and make their books with their children. And one day, this child really changed my life. There's a 6-year-old child who had stayed with the mother always, didn't go to the children's playtime, but stay there in the session, always focusing on me and listening to me. And then one day she came with her written book. She actually had not been able to write it. Her older sister had written it for her. And this book was about, the mother was very shy on sharing this book because it wasn't that easy. The child began by saying, every time that my father comes home, he's very tired from the fields and he doesn't want anybody to make noise and he doesn't want us to play. And the mother said, well, this is a reality. And she was a little sorry about that. But then the child says, but this evening, his little daughter decided to change this. She came to him and said, Father, I have something that will cure your being so tired. And she shared a book with him. And this is a book on rebuses that she was able to follow. And she said, well, when they got to the point where the pony and the bear had eaten so many apples that their bellies were about to burst, the father laughed. And then he said, you were right. I don't feel so tired anymore. And then she adds to the story, and the sister who's copying what she's saying, copies this too. And haven't you figured out yet, dummy, who is that little girl? Haven't you figured out yet who's that father? And haven't you figured out yet what I'm going to do every night? This is a child who understood the power of books, the power of reading, the power of using words to change your reality. And this is the message that we want children to understand and young people to understand. Our social reality, our environment is created by us. We contribute to whatever it is. We can also change it. We can also improve it. This, which is a social truth. Society is not what it is. Society is what it could be if we were to act differently. Is true also at the smaller level of our own personal lives. And this little Ceci, which I will never forget, really gave me the courage to begin emphasizing these ideas with very young children, because the 6-year-old had shown me the way.
Well, Isabella, really, the only key word there is be humble, be truthful, and be open. And then people will follow.
That's exactly right. And also to note that our kids can inspire us as well, right? So that was really well said. Gracias, señoras. Really appreciate you being here with us. We're going to transition now into Dr. Robin Avelar Salle is founder and CEO of Orenda Education. For more than 20 years, she and her team at Orenda have helped different districts and schools aspiring to transform their systems and practice to raise student achievement. She is a true equity warrior and an advocate for justice within the educational system. Her mission is to change the odds for the 20 million kids in the United States for whom the current systems of instruction and improvement are not working predominantly, specifically for the Latino, African American, and students from under-resourced families. She is an amazing author of the book called Shattering Inequities, Real World Wisdom for School and District Leaders. Please help me welcome Dr. Robin Avelar Salle.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation, Patricia. This has been an amazingly enriching conference that we've attended, and I hope to be able to contribute a little bit to that. Today, what I'm going to do is to mix a little bit of two stories. One is a little bit of my story personally, as Patricia has asked us all to do, and the other is to discuss or to share how my story intermixes with a very special person, a teacher named Salle Castro. Just by way of introduction, would you mind writing in the chat yes or no? Have you ever heard of Salle Castro? And I'll just wait a second. Yes or no? Good, thank you, thank you. A little bit more, a few more. See, and that's what I would expect. It's a sad truth that a lot of people have not heard about him. When I'm done, I hope you forget me, but I hope you remember Mr. Castro. So with that, we'll begin. What I'll title this presentation is what does culturally relevant relevancy mean actually to a student? We're talking a lot about cultural relevancy in education and how we can provide that for students, but from a student's point of view, which as the previous presenter said, all of us on this side were once students. So from the student's perspective, there's a very significant experience with cultural relevancy. And what I'd like to do is give you a trip through a photo album of sorts of mine, and perhaps that'll help explain a little bit more about what it feels like from this side and explain to you. Thank you, Patricia, for that amazing introduction. But more than anything, what I'm proud of, other than the fact that I had 4 kids within 5 years, is that sitting here before you, be prepared to be impressed, is not the first year, but the 2-time Belmont High School Swinging Sweethearts drill team captain. You may applaud in the chat if you will. So this was Robin circa 1978. Ooh, ooh. So that's John Travolta times. And what I'd like to share with you is that during that time, I was a student at Belmont High School, which is downtown LA, Echo Park area. And my teacher for US history was this person. He was a teacher by the name of Mr. Salle Castro. Everybody knows him as Salle. I have never been able to cross over to calling him Salle, so to me he's Mr. Castro, or if I'm being familiar, I'd call him Castro. And that's the extent of my familiarity. And his legacy is all of the students, the hundreds and hundreds of students that he taught in his 40-plus career. And I'd like you to introduce him to you this way. This is what it felt like to be in his classroom. The only thing I want you to know is my high school, Belmont High School, is a huge downtown LA high school, very urban kind of high school, 4,000 students, about more than 1,500 per class, although there were less than 500 students who graduated. So we have about a 50% dropout rate. And Mr. Castro was in the 3rd floor, which is the highest floor of the main building, down the long hallway with very dim lights. In fact, with what would call us to him, there weren't many classrooms open at that part, was this. Put in the chat if you even know what this is. For some of you younger folk, you won't even know what this is. You'll have to Google it. And I hate you for that, but anyway. Anybody? I'll tell you, this is a reel-to-reel tape player. This was before cassettes, before CDs, and so you would play these cintas, how do you say? These reels, I guess, that would thread through this machine and it would play music. And the way you know you're getting to Mr. Castro's class is that way at the end of the hallway, you'd go up all the 3 stories of steps, and then you'd hear the music, and he would play the Chicano anthem. Does anybody know what that is? Put it in the chat if you do. It's a song. Okay, I'll tell you, because obviously you're a little bit culturally deprived. It's oye, como va, mi ritmo. So that would call us down the hallway, and we'd go into class, and that's what he'd be playing. And his lesson to us, above all else, was this, that he always wrote. His line is, no sean menso, go to college and graduate. No sean mensos. I'll tell you that those of us in my generation and afterward made him change that word to mensos. I'll just say that the word he used to use all the time was rhymed with endejo, and I'll just leave it like that. So we made him change that word, but that's really what he taught us more than all. When you go into a class, I remember the first day of class, we'd sit there, very traditional rows and all that, but he'd ask us, okay, give me your name. And so we'd go down the list, and I remember, he asked me my name, and I said, my name is Robin Avelar. And he said, no, it's Robin Avelar. And I remember saying, okay, I haven't heard my name said like that in school. I don't think ever, but okay, Robin Avelar. And then he also would change people's names. Like we had a girl by the name of Millie Zapata. And so he used to call her Emiliana Chancla. That's really, really funny if you understand. That if you don't, ask me at the end, and I'll tell you why that's super funny. And then we always had a Smokey. Most neighborhood schools have someone named Smokey in their class. And his name was actually Jesus. Do you see the irony of that? The irony. His name was Jesus, so we had to call him Jesus. So it started the first day with acknowledging our identity in that way, subtle, but we really didn't know what we were getting into. The next thing he did was to put this on the board. And so he'd say, okay, Mexican American. Our school was largely Mexican American. So then he'd say, okay, if you are, everybody, let's see, what would we say? Everybody stand up. Okay, we'd stand up. And then he said, if you are Mexican, if you feel Mexican, sit down. Now, all of us were what the previous speaker would have said, were Enyas. So no, I can't say. Like, my experience with Mexico was Ensenada once or twice on the weekend. I can't say. So no, so most of us stayed standing up. And then he said, okay, if you feel American, sit down. We looked around. American, not exactly, not the way that the books say America. So no. So he said, okay, so if you're not Mexican and if you're not American, what are you, a hyphen? And we thought, oh my goodness. So that was the beginning of a life-changing experience with this teacher. Next question, he'd say, okay, write down where we live. Where do you live? Okay, so we wrote down Los Angeles. And he'd say, wrong. So we'd say, okay. So he taught us, and part of the first quiz was we had to memorize the actual name of our city, which really is, and I'm going to try and remember it. La reina, Nuestra Señora, la reina, el pueblo de Nuestra Señora, la reina de Los Ángeles de Porciúncula. Let me see if I got that right. Yep. And see that accent on the uncula? If we didn't put that accent there, we got it all wrong. So we right away knew this was going to be a very different experience. Mind you, this was junior year, and this was U.S. history. So he would do things like this. You know the street Sepulveda? We pronounce it Sepulveda. So he'd say, okay, this is why you need to believe that this is your country. This is why you need to believe that you have contributed, your family, your ancestors have contributed to the core of this country, actually the foundation of this state. So he taught us that Sepulveda was actually Ignacio Sepulveda, who was one of the first mayors of Los Angeles, I should say Los Angeles, and was part of the state assembly and a member of the Superior Court in LA. And so we have all kinds of names like that we didn't know about, like Figueroa, another founder, another politician. We had Pico, which was actually Pio Pico, and he was the last governor of California before it became state. So all of these things were part of our US history class. And then he had us read other books like Among the Valiant. Among the Valiant, if you don't know it, is a book that actually shares the stories of all of the World War II and Korean veterans who were Mexican American who got the Medal of Valor for bravery in those wars. And what he taught us was that we are a patriotic people. Unlike the stereotype, we're very patriotic. We have fought for the country. We have died for the country. We just don't know that it's our country we're really fighting for. And so in his US history class, we really learned to be connected to school, connected to the state, connected to the country, connected to where we live, that we contributed to the foundation. So one of the things he did was he would model college. So the first time I ever was asked, now mind you, I was an A student, but the first time I was ever asked to do a research project was in his class, junior year English. You can only learn what they teach you, right? So let's keep those expectations high. That shouldn't have been the first time. And he would ask us to come out to in the hallway, which was very dark, and he had a table, and he called it office hours. You see what he was trying to do? Acclimate us to the college life. So office hours, and then he'd call us one by one, and he'd say, okay, you're gonna do your research project. Here's all the topics you can select. And he told me, and Robin Avelar, you selected the blowouts of 1968. You had to know Mr. Castro. He volunteered you to what he wanted you to do. So I got the choice to agree with his selection for me. So it was the blowouts. And I said, what the heck are the blowouts, sir? He said, they're also known as the walkouts. And I thought, that sounds like a dance move, but what is that? So he gave me a book called by Rudy Acuña called Occupied America, History of Chicanos. Never heard of him, never heard of the book. And so I started reading, and I learned lots of things. Like one of the things that I read that intrigued me was a poem that's in there. And he didn't make me memorize this, but I kind of have, so let me try it. But he said regarding history. So here's a poem by a student. I think his name was Ricardo Olivas, but it goes something like this. I'm in my US history class. The instructor commences rapping. I'm in my US history class, and I'm on the verge of napping. The Mayflower landed on Plymouth Rock. Tell me more, tell me more. 13 colonies were settled. I've heard it all before. What's that the teacher said? Dare I ask him to reiterate? Why bother? It sounded like he said George Washington was my father. But I can't sit still. So I suddenly raised my mano. And I asked, if George Washington's my father, why wasn't he Chicano? And so continuing to read that, I read about the early 1960s and high school, Lincoln High School, which was a school very near us, and this teacher by the name of Salle Castro. He was in a book. And how in the 60s, he was really the equivalent of Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, but instead of for social and civil rights and farm workers, he fought for educational justice. Who knew? And it started right there in the neighborhoods where we lived. I learned that in 1968, a group of students got together. He was their leader, their teacher, and he was at Lincoln High School, East LA. And the movement sort of spread, and students were very upset after taking classes with him that they didn't know this. until they took his class in high school. They didn't feel connected to the country. In fact, during those times, bad things happened. You'd get punished for speaking Spanish. You got punished by having to do janitorial services. Things like counselors would track you toward vocational and not college. And things like our schools were dilapidated. Like our halls didn't have lights, they were dim. Or like the restrooms didn't have doors, which by the way, they didn't in the restroom in the hallway where I had his class. And I thought, oh my God, this sounds so familiar. And 15,000 kids from all East LA high schools on the same day walked out. If you get a chance to find the movie called Walk Out, it'll show you all about this. But it was an amazing thing. And our teacher was actually arrested on prom night for conspiring against the US government. In fact, they gave him 15 felony charges of conspiracy, which were the equivalent of a penalty of 66 years in prison, along with some others. So the question was, did he conspire? Did he inspire? Well, the story is phenomenal, and I really ask you to look into it. He finally was able to relieve himself of that. They took away his credential, he got it back. However, he was transferred. And where was he transferred to? Belmont High School. None of us even knew that. He was also restricted from ever being a sponsor of a student group. So, but we didn't know, and we also didn't know that's why he was in the 3rd floor at the end of the hallway with no lights and the restrooms not being serviced. So he was being punished even when I went to school with him. So now, mind you, we learned about all this, and I thought, you know what? We're still being tracked against college. Our schools are still dilapidated. We didn't have many advanced classes. So being the drill team captain that I was, please note the gold bar, the gold braid. I said, you know what, Mr. Castro, I think we have the same issues. It's 10 years later, 1978. And so we got a group together of us, and we created a plan to do a reenactment of the walkouts of 1978. That's the actual button. We heard that the students 10 years before had made buttons, so we got a little button maker and we made buttons. We heard that they met in the park under the trees, so we met in the park under the trees, and on a certain day at a certain time during class time, we were gonna all walk out. So it was lunchtime, and we were gonna go to 5th period, and it was gonna be time to walk out. And just as we were going to go back to class where we were gonna walk out, we looked up, and there were snipers, police snipers on the roofs pointing at us on the flats. And honestly, the students 10 years ago were brave enough to overcome all that and still blow out of their schools, but we were not. So we dutifully went back to class. Mr. Castro happened to be my teacher the next period, and I cried and I said, Mr. Castro, I'm so sorry. We just don't have the bravery that the students 10 years ago, we're just not worthy. You know, they walked out for us, and we just can't. And I'm so sorry. And he said, okay, Rabin Avelar, hear me and hear me well. Those students walked out for the same issues that you have now, but they walked out so you could walk in. So the times now, you educate yourself. You go to college and you graduate. No seas mensa. And you get your BA and you get your master's degree and you get your doctorate, and then you'll be on the inside. You won't be an outsider and they'll have to listen. So I'll just tell you, I did, and I went to Cal State LA. I became a Chicano Studies major. Talk about it. It just empowers you. And that's me with my sister. And then what happened is, while I was there before I graduated, I was scared to go to campus by myself. So my beautiful, beautiful father, who was a teacher in Mexico and then came to the United States and became a waiter and a bartender my whole life, found out while he was waiting for me in class that he could transfer his credential here with just a few classes, like US history. And so he did that. So he became the first graduate in our family with a BA. Then I graduated next. Then my sister graduated next. And then there was my mom. And we looked at my mom. I remember one day going to mom and saying, Mom, we're an educated family now. All of us have a BA, a college degree, except for you. It's time for you to go. So what I'm going to show you here is she did start college at 50. This is me getting my master's degree and my mom getting her bachelor's degree at the same graduation. So you look at us now, we're a very well-educated family. Not quite how it started, but it's infectious. I ended up going to Stanford to get my doctorate, and this is with my sister. And my father had been very, very ill. We came from LA. We drove to Stanford. He was in a wheelchair by then and sat in the front row. And while I walked across the stage, I blew my dad a kiss. And then he left us very, very shortly after that. But Mr. Castro, along with my family and my parents, made me feel like other people, I'm not the first person that wants to contribute. We actually have lots and lots of shoulders to stand on. And so really, it is our obligation to pay it forward. Others did it for us. And so I say, what does cultural relevancy feel like as a student? Well, it feels like this. It feels like just being a typical family that in school, people might say things like, oh, those poor kids, they were born, they didn't stand a chance at birth. Like so many kids, there's alcohol and narcotic addiction, there's incarceration, there's various types of abuse. There's things that happen in families that from the outside make you feel like, it's impossible for these kids, poor things. Let's just lower our expectations and hope they graduate. But you know what? When you feel empowered, when you feel strong inside, then even somebody from a family like this could end up one day going to an Ivy League school and graduating with the most advanced degree we offer in the country. And so please, please remember Mr. Sal Castro, a beautiful teacher who, when he died, said, all I want is to be remembered as a teacher. So please let's remember the legacy of Mr. Sal Castro. And with that, I leave you, Patricia.
Wow, gracias, Robin. Let's see those thoughts and comments.
Go
All
ahead.
right, let's see. Paying it forward. How do you currently pay it forward to others, especially our youth?
So actually, I'm very glad that you asked that question. So after a career as a instructional assistant, teacher, principal, district office administrator, university professor, I'm either really good or I can't keep a job, I can't tell. But about 24 years ago, I launched a group called Principals Exchange at that time, which is now Orenda, which means the power inherent in every human being to change the world and to change ourselves. And what we do, we're an organization, and what we do is go into schools and districts that have gaps in student achievement or student outcomes that they want to understand. And we go in and do a scholarly study to understand where the choke points are, where are the barriers to kids going to graduation, college, and university ready, so they can make all the choices. And then we go in and we partner with the school or the district to get rid of those chokeholds, and then watch kids just exceed everybody's expectations. So it's educational justice is our it's not a fight, it's not a challenge, it's our love, it's our vocation. That's what I do.
Wow, that was beautifully said. For one of our other questions, how would you encourage students to organize and find their voice?
Well, first of all, you need to watch the movie Walkouts. You need to watch the movie. It's by the same producer as the one that made Salina, and the one that made the Zoot Suit movie, which is out on Netflix right now. I can't remember his name, I'm embarrassed to say. But watch Walkouts, because you can't watch that movie without feeling like there's work to be done and that others figured out how to do it. So stand on the shoulders of those, who did it before. I think that's the best way. Learn what people did before, know that it's been done successfully. And, I would say that they handed it to our year. Our year, we took it as far as we can go, and we're still going. And now, mija, Isabela, it's your turn. We give you the baton. It's your turn to take it forward.
Robin, I think it's also important to highlight the fact that Sal Castro really emphasized the aspect of how our history was lost and how a lot of it wasn't in the text. So I think it's very important that, when we are using our voice, that we continue to preserve that history and help to highlight it and continue to talk about it.
Patricia, back then, Mr. Castro, who was a historian, was unique because he did the research himself as a student, and then he brought it to us. Now you can Google stuff. We didn't have that. He didn't. So if we didn't get it from him, we couldn't get it. So don't think if you happen not to be Latino, or if you are Latino, Hispanic Latino, and you don't know this stuff, don't feel bad. None of us did. We really didn't. And we still don't. So you don't have to be of the culture or have this background to make school relevant. Research is online now for whatever subject you teach, whatever grade you teach. There are contributions of Hispanic, Latino people who came before that the information is accessible. What you'll do is scratch your head and say, really? Oh my, we had politicians in the 1800s? What? The Constitution in California was bilingual before it was all in English? There's history out there available for us to access. We just need to have the ganas, the desire to bring it to our students, which I know you do.
And talk about a true equity warrior that he was, because there he was advocating and helping to empower the students to have their voice, and then ultimately suffer repercussions as a result of that.
Hugely.
It was
hugely. You can see there's actually also a documentary. If you YouTube things, you'll see the pieces of or the complete documentaries that show the primary source footage that'll make you cringe. It just it'll change your mind about things like the Brown Berets. If you've heard about Brown Berets and them being militants and radicals and communists, and actually they were equity warriors too. And Mr. Castro got them to come to protect the kids who were going to walk out from the police. And they did a very good job, and yet students were beaten. And I can't describe it the way that you can see it in footage. So I encourage you to see that. Mine was really meant to be an appetizer and to get Mr. Castro's name, bring it forward so that it would inspire everybody to know who he is and to look for other examples of our contributions to this country.
It says, what do you think helped inspire Mr. Castro to take so many chances and approach life and teaching in such a different way?
His story was he came here. He was born in Mexico and came here, and actually was a Korean War veteran, and then decided to be a teacher. Not necessarily enlightened at that point, but while he was here going to school, he only spoke Spanish, and he felt that hurt, that pain. And then when he became a teacher, he saw it in his students, and he thought, what is up with all these stereotypes? And there was a pivotal moment. There was an article written in the LA Times with a headline that said something like, when you visit quaint East Los Angeles, you will hear the rat-a-tat-tat of, beer cans clinking, and you will smell the aroma of fried tortillas. And it was just so insulting and stereotypical that he said, oh, no. So he was motivated to go to become a teacher. And then when he became a teacher and he saw that there might be 90% Mexican American, Chicano, Latino kids in school, but the student government was all non-Hispanic Latino students, and there were no Hispanic Latino teachers, it got him very angry. In fact, one of the first things that got him in trouble is he encouraged his students to run for student body office, to teach them civics in his class. And so he decided to create a political party so that they could learn about that, and they called it the Tortilla Movement. And oh my goodness, like that, he just was committed to the end. And I wondered how he kept up the fight after being beat down so many times, so many subtle injustices. Imagine being put on the top floor at the end of the hall with no lights. I mean, just those subtle, what we would now call microaggressions, not so micro. But till the day that he left us, he actually called me and he couldn't speak anymore. And his beautiful wife, Charlotte Lurchenmuller, spoke for him as he whispered to her, and he said, I am not going to be here any longer, but now it's your turn. So you know how you volunteered to do the research study on the walkouts? Well, you just volunteered to keep the movement going. So many of his students, we do this. In fact, you can Google, I give you another name, Paula Crisostomo, just like it sounds, Paula Crisostomo. She was one of the major walkout leaders of 1968 and now has become a dear sister friend of mine. And you can hear her speak in the first person about what it was like when they're in the classrooms and walk out, walk out, walk out. And then the bell rings and boom, the doors bust open and everybody goes out. Just imagine. But for you students who are thinking you want to do something like that, remember he said, times are different now. Our way is not to walk out, our way is to walk in. So study, study, study. Get your degrees, get your diplomas, and then now you will be invited to this amazing conference with this crazy slate of renowned people, and wonder how the heck you got invited to this.
For one last comment, I wanted to read this. Talk about living history. What an amazing experience. All children need role models who fight for their right to increase their education. So kind of to turn that into a question, I would like to ask, how can more teachers be role models for their students?
You know, that always brings to mind, I know not all teachers are Hispanic Latino who teach Hispanic Latino kids. So the question comes to me a lot. Do you have to be African American to teach African American kids, African to teach African kids? The answer is no, but you have to be responsive. You have to look at who you're teaching and see what response you're getting. If kids are disengaged, people are born curious. So if kids are disengaged, that means they're not connecting. Believe me, US history felt dry until, to a lot of people, Hamilton. Although there's, we don't show up in Hamilton, but we were there during that time. You have to connect. So something as simple as look at everything around you that is in Spanish, and then Google it. Who knew the street names were really of people who were founders? So I say, to be teachers, just be responsive. And it's hard to get kids to write, for example, but if you say, tell me the story of your childhood, you get 12-page narratives from students. It's because it connects to us. So connect to your kids, and Google's your best friend because all the information's available now. It just takes the will.
Robin, lots of wonderful comments, from being inspiring to amazing to this is a gift. There's some that are even saying that this is just a gift to hear you share, Sal Castro's life experience, and that you were able to share that in with him. And then there's others that are committing to communicate and share the culture, the language, and take pride. So look at what you've inspired already. But lastly, the big burning question I saw was, did you ever keep in touch with him along the way? And I know that you did, because now you're actually one of the board of directors for
the Sal Castro Foundation. You know what happened is, after we got to college, I didn't hear about my history teacher anymore. I would come back, of course, because I was very famous at my high school. So for alumni events and all, as drill team captain, you are royalty of your high school. So I would be invited. That's a joke. You should be laughing. So I would be invited back, but I didn't get, right after I got my doctorate from Stanford, I got a call. I don't know how he got my number, but he said, "Mija," and that was a mija that I heard many times after that. "Mija, I need your help. I have a conference. Look it up. It's magical. Chicano Youth Leadership Conference. And it's once or twice a year, every year. And it takes high school kids from the city. And in essence, okay, this is very wrong, but it's college brainwashing and cultural pride. With every doctor, lawyer, teacher who's Hispanic, Latino present to inspire the kids. And he said, it's time for you to come and speak to my kids. And every year after that, I would get the call, "Mija, I need you to come and speak to my kids." But it was interesting that he waited till right after my doctorate. It made me think, how did he know I was going to go all the way? I didn't know I was going to go all the way, but I guess he believed in me more than I even saw for myself. So yes, I kept in touch with him till there's no end, till now.
Wow, Robin, muchas gracias. Te lo agradezco mucho de estar aquí. Really, really appreciate you and the inspiration that you left all of us feeling. We are now down to the very last one, and I'm just as excited with having Dr. Victor Rios here because he is phenomenal. He has been featured on TED Talks, Help for Kids, the Education System Ignores, and has actually garnered over 1.5 million views. He's actually the subject of the documentary film called The Pushouts. He's got an incredible background. He's been highlighted not only in TED Talks, but also Oprah Winfrey, Primer Impacto, and the National Public Radio. And in his spare time, he's actually an Associate Dean of Social Sciences and Professor of Sociology at the University of California, Santa Barbara. He is just absolutely incredible and works with so many different local school districts to develop programs for students who have been left behind in their education. So he uses a lot of his personal experience of leaving the streets, dropping out of school, and being incarcerated as a juvenile, along with his own research findings, that he has developed interventions for marginalized students aimed at promoting personal transformation and civic engagement. Not only that, he's also authored 6 books. Let's hear from Dr. Victor Rios. Help me welcome him. Bienvenido, ¿cómo está?
Gracias. Muy bien. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, familia, for inviting me to this wonderful event. I'm very excited. Hello, educators. Hello, professionals. Hello, social justice warriors. We just heard from an incredible individual. And I'm just so impressed by the story of Sal Castro. Thank you, Doctora Robin Avelar, LaSalle. It's just wonderful to hear you school us about our sheroes and heroes. How about that? So I'm going to just start by saying, hey, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And so I feel like this event has just brought giant after giant after giant along. And I'm one of those people that has benefited from these incredible individuals that have pushed for social justice in the Latinx community, social justice in multicultural communities, social justice in America and across the globe in general. So I'm just gonna show a little image of course, Kamala Harris in the shadow, and some of you recognize Ruby Bridges was the first little Black girl to get integrated, and she suffered because she was trying to get integrated. And so if we have seen a little further in this world, it's because we stand on the shoulders of giants. This is paraphrasing, of course, Sir Isaac Newton. And as you know, every historical era has a population that is trying to find enlightenment, but then many times maybe that population is seen as other. right? And in these moments, many of America's populations are seen as other. Como por ejemplo, en California, cuando yo era niño, nos decían, hablen español. You know, just like, you know, California, a so-called progressive state, we would always be told by policies, by laws, by rules at school, by people that made us feel ashamed of who we were. Hey, don't speak Spanish. There was a law that passed in California when I was a teenager to ban bilingual education. So we have to make sure that we teach our children of all colors, of all backgrounds, about their heroes and sheroes. Because if we are not doing that job as their educators, they're learning about these heroes and sheroes out there, and especially during a time of social empowerment, where young people, while they were in quarantine, were learning about the movements taking place and the history in the making taking place out in the streets of America. And we're talking about movements for social justice, for change in this world. And when children come into the classroom and we're not talking or acknowledging those movements, we're erasing a piece of their history, because these were their communities that were fighting for social justice. And they're still fighting for social justice, as a matter of fact. Okay, so my own journey, I want to show you my report card. And yes, I was a stereotype. I was a cholo, I was a gangster, I was a troublemaker. This is freshman year, look at this. Well, I got one B and another B, but then it's all Fs. And then look at this, spring semester, I dropped out of school. So I was a stereotype heading in the wrong direction. I was hopeless. I was a kid from the hood. My mother was on welfare. I had no father. He abandoned me before I was born. I was struggling as a little kid, violence everywhere, guns pulled out at me when I was 8 years old, abuse at home, just dilapidated conditions. But it's not just, a lot of times we blame families. It's not just the community. It's also the systems that we engage with who make us feel like we don't belong. So I'm in third grade, I'm sitting in the front of class trying to learn. And I was actually, when I was little, I was a little nerd. I would love to read Greek mythology. And I'm sitting in class one day, third grade, and I got a stack of Greek mythology books, and I loved learning about all these Greek gods. My favorite Greek god was Proteus, because Proteus could shapeshift. Proteus could become a rock among rocks. Proteus could become water among water. Proteus could just do it all, and I wanted to do it all. I wanted to escape my environment. I would sit under on top of some dirt under a stairwell in front of my apartment, and while people were going crazy around me, drug dealers, drug addicts, just noise of the inner city, I'm reading Greek mythology, escaping my world. So I know how to read. I'm like advanced, and I'm sitting in the front of class one day, and my teacher's like, "Victor, read this word," and it was a 4-letter word. I said, "Nah." He said, "Victor, I need you to read this word right now." And I'm like, "Nope." And he says, "If you don't read this word, I'm kicking you out of class." I'm like, "Nope." Kicks me out of class, sends me to the principal. But the reason I wouldn't read the word was not because I was too cool for school, or because I didn't want to, or because I didn't know how to read that word. The reason I didn't read that word was because I needed glasses. You see, I didn't realize I needed glasses till I was 14 years old. So sometimes some basic health conditions, in this case, I needed a basic piece of technology, glasses. I have them right here, by the way. I just needed that piece of equipment, piece of technology to be able to thrive in school. But my teacher misrecognized, did not understand the social needs of kids from the working class. Because in this middle class school environment, right, we want our kids to achieve a middle class status or above. That's what we're in it for, to send them to college, become professionals. We forget that the basic needs of our children are sometimes not being met. So she kicks me out, sends me to the principal. Principal scolds me. He got mad at me because I wouldn't look at him in the eyes. He said, "Mr. Rios, son, look at me in the eyes when I'm talking to you." And I wouldn't look at him in the eyes. And he got mad at me. He sent me home. And as some of you know, in some of our communities, you don't look at authority figures in the eyes as a sign of disrespect. But in America, you need to look at me in the eyes and shake my hand so we can close that business transaction, right? This is America. I read that, by the way, that strategy, that skill set in a little book called The Art of the Deal. Just kidding. I never read that book, but all to say, that this principal was trying to teach me something right, I guess, how to make it in America. But at the same time, he's trying to assimilate me. And I resisted and refused that because I'm proud of my culture. I'm proud of where I come from. I don't want to be like you, especially if you're messing me up and accusing me of stuff I haven't done. So instead, he should have taught me to shapeshift. He should have taught me to be like, hey, Mr. Rios, you know what? In America, this is how we look at people. This is how we handle business. But guess what? You could be proud of where you come from when you're around your tias, you at church or with whoever, and you could look down and and pay deference and be respectful. That's cool too. Be proud of both worlds you come from. That's what the principal should have done. But he didn't do that. So I shut down from school from 3rd grade to 11th grade, didn't read one book, didn't complete one homework assignment, was completely checked out of school. And while I was checked out of school, I was on the streets hustling, trying to make a living, trying to survive, trying to help moms with the bills. Dropped out of school, pushing lawnmowers, hustling on the streets, in and out of juvie. I went to juvie 3 times for 3 felonies, stealing cars. In the background, you'll see, I'll get out the way in a minute. That's me in high school. Talk about stereotypes. Nationally televised image of a brown kid, a brown cholo, getting dragged away by a cop. You'll see the cop in a minute. There he is, dragging away this gangster kid on PBS Frontline. And this is the image that they would portray at the time in the 1990s about brown kids, brown and black kids in America, right? There was a term for us. We were the super predators, right? There's still stereotypes about black and brown kids. We have to defy those stereotypes. We have to teach kids that they're better than the stereotypes that society places on them. But the only way to understand and break down stereotypes is by understanding where the origins of those stereotypes came from, right? Because Dr. Avelar talked about how there was social dynamite. The social dynamite were people protesting and walking out of school in the 1960s and demanding racial equity and justice. And by the 1990s, some of us had been seen by society as social junk. So how do you go from social dynamite to social junk? And telling that history, right? Being seen as social junk and being constructed as social junk in our society is super important for our children to understand, because maybe, guess what? Maybe they're coming in feeling like social junk. And you have to let them know as their educator, you know what? You're not social junk. You know, you're not junk at all. You're a treasure and you're going to make it far in life. So I have to tell you that after this scene, unfortunately, I get kicked out of school. My best friend is shot and he passes away. At that moment, I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know where to go. I went to one place where one person had told me she would be there for me. I went to school to find my teacher, Miss Russ. Miss Russ, hey, that lady was loca, man. Like, you know, she was the kind of teacher that was always in your business. She was the kind of teacher that rolled up in her old beat up 1980 Toyota Tercel and pull up in front of the apartment complex where everyone in the hood lived. All the kids that went to school from the hood lived in this big apartment complex. We used to call it El Gallinero because that's like, you know, the chicken coop, because we all lived there. And she would knock on every single door and talk to the parents. And she knew very little Spanish and my mom knew very little English. So this is how the conversation went. She would knock. Hey, Senora, my mom opened the door. Victor hasn't been in school. I'm worried about him. And my mom would only say one phrase the whole time. Sí, maestra. Sí, maestra. Yes, teacher. Yes, teacher. So my teacher would be like, do you want Victor to fail? And my mom would say, sí, maestra. Sí, maestra, right? Everything was sí, maestra. And my teacher was like, oh my goodness, was that like an utter waste of time? No, you know why, teachers? Human connection has no language. Human connection has no language. So if you want to connect with students, regardless of what you look like and who you are and what language you speak, guess what? You're going to connect, but you have to have a desire to connect, right? And this is what I say is creating an ecosystem of cariño, an ecosystem of care. In Spanish, cariño just feels a lot bigger than care. Cariño, when you say cariño, it's endearment, it's embrace, it's this desire to support and care and love for someone. Not just, oh, I care about you. That's cool. That's step one in SEL. Oh yeah, I care about you. Let's do an activity together. Let me hear about your day. What's your rose? What's your thorn? Boom. I care about you. Cariño, hey, let's do this activity. Let me hear about your story. Let me hear about where you're coming from, who your family is. And let me let you know that it's okay to be who you are and that I'm gonna teach you how to succeed in this country and in this global economy. Boom, both worlds are possible. Un mundo donde muchos mundos viven. One world where many worlds live. That's the kind of educational system we can create for our students. That's the kind of educational system that my teacher created for me. So my teacher projected for me a better, brighter future. She helped me change my perspective in life. She made me realize that I could make it. So she helped me little by little catch up on my credits. She also connected me with university students. This is Martin Flores, one of my UC Berkeley mentors. He was a student at University of California, Berkeley. And he would come to the high school and mentor me. And he would teach me, hey, people like us, we could go to college too. And you could tell this guy, you know, he's got some swag. And that this guy resembles my community. And he's there, he is protesting for better education outcomes for our students, for more Latinx teachers in the community. And he mentored me and made me realize I could go to college. So with the help of my teacher, the help of my mentor, I applied to college, get to college, the rest is history. I start mentoring other kids. I start doing things for my family and my community. This is very important, educators, to take this point with you. And that is that to embrace familial cultures. You have to recognize, first of all, take an assessment. Do I teach a familial culture? If the answer is absolutely, then guess what? You have to start setting up pedagogy that connects to familial culture. I'll give you some examples. A pedagogy that connects to a familial culture looks like this when we're talking about college. Okay, Victor, and this is what my teacher did, by the way, exactly in this way. Victor, if you want to change your community, there's a lot of violence, a lot of crime, a lot of detriment. Yeah, I want to change it, Miss Russ. Well, you need to go to college then if you want to come back and help change it. Victor, do you help your family out? Yeah, I want to help my family. I want to help my mom out. Well, you need to go to college so you can help your mom out. Come back and help. Oh, that's what college is about? Absolutely. Oh, I didn't realize. Thank you. An individualism cultural frame in education, you're going to be familiar with it because we see it over and over repeating in the history of the education system in America. It goes like this. Hey, go to college far away, Ivy League, if you can. After college, get a good profession, buy a white picket fence home in the suburbs. Don't ever come back to the hood. Run away and don't look back. Our kids, some of them are, especially the kids from familial cultures, they're terrified when we tell them that narrative. That's why there's a resistance to college. But if we embrace familial culture and we defy the negative stereotypes told about our communities, right? That, oh, these families don't value education. Actually, guess what? Latinx families do value education. It's just that for some families, particularly in the working class, there's ways in which that value comes out and the education system is not prepared to translate that value. So instead of blaming families, we have to translate for families. Oh, you value education? Yeah, my family says, échale ganas. We could do an hour on ganas. We could write a book on ganas. So, but just know the phrases and the way in which our communities show the value of education. So my teacher, even though that was me, this kid doing bad things, throwing up gang signs here. She would always say to me, Victor, I know you'll meet presidents one day. And I was like, Miss Russ, you're crazy. I ain't meeting no presidents. This is what I call educator projected self-actualization. Educator projected self-actualization, where teachers are just so positively pushing a message, a positive message to students, that they just end up believing that message, that they end up manifesting that message. That message comes true. So 20 years later, after she told me this and helped me get to college and through college, I get invited to the White House to advise the Obama administration on gun violence and policing in America. I even get to take my family to meet the president at the time, President Obama. There's my son eating cotton candy. There's President Obama. We got front row seats. I mean, it's incredible. He comes up to my family and I'm holding my son in my arm. He holds up his hand and he says to my son, "Give me 5. Don't leave me hanging." In that moment that my son's hands and Obama's hands touch, guess what I'm thinking about? Miss Russ, you really are loca. You really are crazy. So I'm gonna ask you a question, educators. Can a teacher predict the future? The answer is no. You cannot predict the future, but you can project the future. You see the difference? I need you to project every single day to all of our children a better, brighter future. With those positive interactions day to day, you will make transformative change. You will become more culturally responsive, and you will be able to believe in our children so much that they end up believing in themselves. My name is Dr. Victor Rios. My mentors believed in me so much. They tricked me into believing in myself. I appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much for your time. Hasta luego. Cuídense.
Well, sí le vamos a echar ganas, and we're going to see what our participants want to share with you. So what are the narratives today that are wrong and that we need to fight to change, especially for young kids of color?
Yeah, you know, the at-risk students narrative, that's got to go. That's like, that has to go yesterday. You know, we're like, oh, I work with at-risk kids, you know. In America, in urban America, to label kids at risk, that's racism. Why? Because if you take a percentage, wherever you're at, whatever city, major city in America you're in, of the kids that are being labeled at risk, you know, you're going to have a 75, 80% of them being kids of color. And what you label me determines how you're going to treat me. You label me a risk, you're going to treat me as a risk. So instead, I propose an at promise. And this is a movement we've been pushing for 20 plus years in California. We changed the law in California Education Code. The Governor Newsom signed a new law last year where you're no longer allowed to call kids at risk in California Education Code. You call them at promise. 25 years of fighting it. And we finally got, you know, and some people say, oh, that's just political correctness. But what you label our children determines a lot of outcomes for them. So please, let's change the deficit. I'm gonna, you know, talk a little bit about trauma-informed approaches related to that. All right, trauma-informed is a very important movement. We need to look at how we can serve children that have been traumatized by the pandemic, by poverty, by racism. But let me tell you something. We are more than just trauma. You look at the spectrum of human emotion, it's not just trauma. Traumatized people can be happy. You know, they can be excited. They could thrive. But if we're just focusing on people as traumatized, as another deficit. And so instead, I call it emotion-informed approaches. Emotion-informed approaches. So where we're just looking at all the spectrum of emotion, how do we address, of course, trauma? But how do we address it in a way that engages the various identities? And you heard me with a theme of shape-shifting, right? The various identities that our children have, where they're shapeshifters. Yeah, sure, they're traumatized, some of them, but guess what? Within a second's time, with the right resources, right environment, maybe a beanbag room, maybe conflict resolution, maybe restorative justice, you know, all of a sudden that child's no longer traumatized. Now they're thriving. So it's very important for us to check our language about kids, particularly, let's name a spade a spade. We're talking about racialized kids. We're talking about Latinx kids, Black kids, Native American kids, Asian American kids, and poor white kids. Let's just name it. Like there's classism, there's racism, and these are the populations that are impacted by deficit language or stereotypes that then end up damaging them in the long run.
Yeah, that was very insightful. For our next question, we have stories like yours are not good often enough. What are your thoughts on convincing educators to be like Miss Rose, or is she one in a million?
Oh no, there's a Miss Russ in all of us. But the problem is that in many schools I work with, you know, I'll ask teachers, hey, who's the Miss Russ here? And I'll say, it's a setup, right? It's a setup. Hey, who's the Miss Russ here? And then they'll point to that one or two teachers that, helps the, and they say it in their words, that's the one that helps the bad kids right there. That's the one that helps the bad kids. Well, then I have to spend an hour talking to them about how you label the behavior, not the child, and don't call these kids bad. Anyway, we go through that and workshop. And then after that workshop, we label the behavior, not the child, right? Then I say to them, I set you up. All of you are Miss Russ, but only some of you choose to activate Miss Russ, right? And so all of us are Miss Russ. And I don't, no disrespect to the question, but I don't believe the narrative that many times those stories, right, don't turn out, because as a matter of fact, lots of kids that go through hard, adverse, difficult childhood adversities and trauma, maybe they don't end up getting PhDs, maybe they don't get college degrees, but many end up finding a way out and a way to having stability in their life. We just have to make sure that we provide them the resources to get there sooner, and that when they get there, that they actually have more stable employment and career opportunities.
Such a great story. What is your advice for teachers that are more likely to be punitive rather than student advocates that project in positive ways?
There's a movement in this country. It's an equity movement. It's a justice movement. It's happening across the country. We're no longer, as educators, going to tolerate, in every major city, every major district in America, Black, Latinx, and Native American kids being the ones disproportionately put in special education and disproportionately disciplined. Right? We're no longer going to tolerate that. We're going to change that. And educators across the country are standing up for that justice. So what I have to say to the educators that are still punitive, I'm sorry, but that's old school. You gotta come with the new school. What's the new school? Let's be restorative. Of course, let's hold kids accountable. Yeah, let's teach them lessons. But those lessons have to be taught where they can learn from their mistakes and move forward. And you ask yourself as an educator, how would I teach my child a lesson? Would I want my child to be locked up for having, first time trying out some drugs? Or do I want my child to learn from that experience by going through a restorative educational process? We know the answer. So let's treat other people's kids as if they were our own children.
Definitely. And for another question, what do you think helped you find your way when so many others haven't? What was the difference for you?
Yeah, the story of America is the story of yourself up by the bootstraps, right? Like I picked myself up by the bootstraps and I had a hard time. We're a country of immigrants, and we got in those wagons and we headed west and we made it, right? That's the story of America, right? And there's a problem with that narrative. And then the problem with that narrative is that, oh, I must be special because I made it. And if I made it and you didn't make it, it's because you didn't work hard. So we actually have to get rid of that narrative that, some of us make it because we're special. Actually, I made it because I had opportunities. I'm a proud product of affirmative action. That's how I got into undergrad. By grad school, it had been banned in the state of California. But undergrad, I'm a proud product of affirmative action, equal opportunity programs, mentoring, resources, preparation for college, summer bridge program. You name any minority serving program in education, I enrolled in. And if I hadn't had those supports, I wouldn't be Dr. Rios. So don't get it twisted. I'm not a genius. I just got a lot of help and support, and we have to put that help and support into our children today.
That's exactly right, Dr. Rios. I mean, it's important also to indicate that we have to offer those opportunities to even our students that perhaps have an English language barrier. We have to offer those opportunities to allow them to get into gifted programs, into honors classes, AP classes, AMP, we could go on, right? But again, it goes back to the opportunity. So I'm so delighted that you highlighted that part of it, because it's very important that we're doing that for all of our kids. We have come to the end now, and I just have to say thank you so much, Dr. Rios, for being here with us. Your story is inspiring. It is incredible. I know that it certainly has triggered lots of emotions within us that are positive, because I know a lot of us are going to go back and really make sure that we are seeing our kids, that we are allowing them to voice and make them feel that they are seen and heard. So thank you all for being here with us. It has been a marathon, has it not? We are definitely delighted that you joined our marathon toward educational transformation, where we are working to affirm the history, culture, and language of all of our students. Thank you so much, everyone. Gracias.